Thanks for joining us here. I believe we are live streaming now on YouTube. We've got some storms rolling across Ontario. I'm Kim McDonald. This is the Weather Network. I will be joined by storm hunter Mark Robinson as well as meteorologist Rachel Modestino momentarily. Just showing you a quick shot of what's in place right now. So severe thunderstorm watches, not warnings. Areas to the north include Chapleau. We did have a warning for Gogama, so in northeastern areas of the province. And then towards the south, places like Huron and Perth, Barrie, Orillia, places that people like to go on a Friday of a long Canada Day weekend. So there will be a lot of travelers, and these storms could produce some very big rain showers, strong winds, and there is the potential for some rotation on these storms as well. It's going to be a bit of a volatile weekend. Friday won't be the only stormy day. However, that's where we are now when we are anticipating Environment and Climate Change Canada to issue severe thunderstorm warnings. That's what they would do in case one does become severe. And we're again going to see them across Georgian Bay as well as Lake Huron. Those are the areas that are already impacted. Smoke could be a big factor with this. If you're not in a severe thunderstorm watch, you're likely in this, a special air quality statement. And this smoke may have an impact on the kinds of storms, or at least the impact of the storms that we will see in Ontario today. And with that, I'm going to bring in meteorologist Rachel Modestino to talk a little bit more about this smoke and the kind of setup that we have on this Friday.
Yeah, well, let's take a step back and look at the overall synoptic scale view of this storm. It's quite complicated indeed. We have low pressure over top of areas in central Ontario and a trough that's digging across the Great Lakes. But why do we see those storms in southern Ontario? It's a very small scale feature. There's that front that I was talking about, and that's what's prompting some of these thunderstorms up through Chapleau and Timmins, and also stateside in through Michigan. But looking at southern Ontario specifically, we are seeing some showers beginning to develop, like you mentioned, Kim, across Lake Huron shores and Georgian Bay shores up through Owen Sound, making their way very slowly across the lake shores. And what's causing that? Well, it's a smaller scale feature, a lake breeze boundary. So the colder air coming in from Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, it's interacting with the warmer air on top of the surface. So creating similar to what we call a cold front, but again, very local feature. So that's what we're dealing with currently. We will continue to see these lake breeze boundaries begin to stir up a little bit of trouble for areas along Lake Huron and Georgian Bay shores, pushing towards the northeast. And then what we will be looking onto throughout this afternoon and into the evening is those bigger storms that you were talking about, Kim. So the potential for supercells to develop, or cells that could contain some larger hail and bring some pretty big impacts to folks up the 400, Highway 6, Highway 8, possibly heading upwards to Cottage Country. We're going to be developing a lot of that thunderstorm energy. So where you see those oranges and where you see those reds, that's enough to get in some of those scattered thunderstorm activities. So this is what we're tracking right now for Friday.
Yeah, and you know, it's going to be problematic if you're in a car and you're driving in this kind of weather. It can get very difficult to see in a matter of moments. All these people anxious to get up north. Maybe you're not quite paying attention. The other thing is, it's okay if you're in a cottage. Usually in a storm like this, you can handle it. But if people are intense, and I mean in camping intense, not intense in personality, but camping intense, of course, then it can become more severe. Obviously, lightning, heavy downpours, and if there is that potential, Rachel, too, for any kind of tornadic activity, that's going to be problematic if you're in a tent. And we always are encouraging people to bring their apps, make sure they've got that on their phone so they know if there is an alert. I just have the temperatures right now. As you were mentioning, it's a little cooler along the lakeshore. When that cool breeze clashes with these kinds of temperatures, this is what it is right now: 27 in Muskoka, 27 in London, 29 in Windsor, a lot of heat. And these temperatures do not include the humidity. And if you've been outside, boy, it's pretty sticky already. I know, Rachel, you like that kind of weather. You could probably do without that hazy smoke from the forest fires, but any kind of clash of cool air and hot, sticky weather, that's usually a recipe for big storms.
Yeah, and we see that in that cold front that is draped really across provinces, even across Canada sometimes. But think of those lake breeze as a cold front that's just maybe a few kilometers in length. And like you mentioned, Kim, this is going to be quite a high impact event because of the time we're in. It's the long weekend. It's Canada Day weekend. So many folks are heading up to the cottage, and the bad news is that these stronger storms are likely to target those roadways that are going to be very busy. In the Mark Robinson was out and saying that the roads were already quite treacherous with traffic and everything. So I believe in the coming hour or even half an hour, it's going to be even harder to travel because of these heavy downpours, maybe even seeing some localized pooling on the roadways. It's just really not something you want to see with many folks out and about on Friday afternoon and evening.
Yeah, and you know, people are anxious to get away. I know it's a long weekend, as you say. We saw a little bit of Mark's live stream earlier from his vehicle. He's got his dash cam on, and people were just driving in such a terrible way, passing with oncoming traffic, that kind of thing. I know you're anxious to get there. Take your time. And if people have waited until the last minute, maybe to travel north, they're now going to be encountering storms. So it's already bad enough, as we were mentioning. People are not great on the roads, as we've already seen. You may not have seen it, but Rachel and I have seen it. And then you add to it heavy downpours, possible stormy weather. It's going to be very difficult. So that's why we're here now. That's why we're live. No warnings at the moment, but that could change at any moment. And when that does happen, of course, people really have to be alert. And again, the difference between a watch and a warning: a watch means we've got the ingredients there for the potential of a storm. We get a warning, it means that it is happening or is imminent. So it's knocking on your door. It hasn't left its house yet if you're under the watch. It's knocking on your door if it's a warning. And this is a look at some of those storms that have already developed. They're not warned, but they're looking pretty juicy already, Rachel.
Yeah, some of these I'm looking not just on radar, but also looking at some of the rotation. And that's something we're going to continue to track through the coming hour, the possibility for rotation, again, very localized scale. But I'm looking at a cell that's approaching Thornbury. So this one right here, that's slowly making its way over. And you can see that purple that's just developed. That's showing me that could be producing some hail. It looks like it's a little bit of a stronger cell, picking up a little bit of steam. So if you are along, I believe that's Highway 21 in between Owen Sound and Collingwood. That one's headed your way. And a lot of these storms are going to continue to move in this direction, maybe even firing up farther south. So this is where our lake breeze boundary is. That's all that we need to trigger some of these storms, because like you mentioned, Kim, it is that hot, soupy, sticky environment outside. And you know, I love it, but so do thunderstorms. So that will continue to fuel the thunderstorms. And then we're going to get into more of those localized features. We can dig into that a little bit farther as to why we put on the 1 or 2 tornadoes on this risk map.
Okay, one of the ingredients in this setup for storms is the CAPE, and so we have convective available potential energy. It just means that there's a lot of energy in the atmosphere. When we get into these red colors, that means there's just a better chance of seeing a storm. And this I'm showing you now is Saturday. It gets pretty, I mean, this is moving pretty quickly, but all through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not quite as bad on Monday, but we still see that we have some CAPE. And once we get these values, say over 1,000 kilojoules, that's when we're talking about the possibility, if not the probability, of severe weather. And that's why we've had this risk map. That's why we're live now, Rachel, because we're anticipating more storms to pop up. And some of these will be fairly juicy. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some localized flooding in these downpours that we're anticipating.
Yeah, and if you can have a look here at the last hour. So you painted a picture of what we're going to see, but this is the same thunderstorm energy that we've had available in the last hour. And you can see those deeper oranges building in across southern Ontario. So that's why we're gearing up for more of that severe weather in the coming really hour or so. That's when we get that prime time heating. We did see quite a bit of clearing as well. You know, I woke up to some loud thunderstorms this morning, but in behind that we did see some clouds clearing. So that's allowing for the sun to heat up the ground. And the more the sun heats the ground, the stronger those storms can be. However, smoke, that's the biggest question mark in this whole setup today.
Yeah, because you don't get a lot of clearing if there's smoke in the atmosphere. And people often are confused by that. Oh, well, the sun came out. You know, they'll go outside and they'll say, well, there's no storms if the sun is out. But it's doing the exact opposite. It's baking the atmosphere. And with this hazy smoke, and I know in Hamilton, when I was walking the dog earlier, the sky was white. And when you see the sky is white rather than blue on what should be a blue sky day, you know that's the smoke impacting the atmosphere. And that will also impact how much the sun can bake the earth. And of course, maybe it will work in our favor where we're not going to see storms as severe as they may have been without the smoke.
Yeah, it's really a toss of the coin. It depends on how much smoke is in the atmosphere. On one end, it adds some particulate matter, which in the air, it can produce more rain, heavier rain. It allows something for raindrops to condense on. But at the same time, if it's too thick, then the sun can't get through and give us that daytime heating that we usually see with these severe thunderstorm events. This was just taken maybe 10-15 minutes ago by Anwar Knight, one of our on-air presenters, and this is in Orangeville. So in and around that area that we're tracking the potential for some of these severe storms. You can see how thick and hazy that smoke is up and around that region. So that's the main question mark with my forecast. Is the smoke going to play a role? Is it going to limit the thunderstorm development or perhaps enhance our precipitation? And it does look like that smoke is not going to be blown out with this event either, Kim. It does look like it sticks around for the Canada Day long weekend. So we will see maybe a little bit of clearing here and there, but models are indicating even into Sunday we could be dealing with that haze.
Yeah, we don't get the benefit of clearing the air, which we normally would when we have a front moving through. We'll see usually a drop in temperatures. The air will clear behind the storms, and you're saying, okay, well, that's the price I had to pay. I had to pay for this, get the storms first in order to get the clearing of the air. But obviously, that's not anticipated in this scenario. And it's just a rare summer so far, Rachel, with the forest fires that we've been seeing burning in northern Quebec and northern Ontario, and the smoke impacting millions of people in Canada, in the US, and most recently, even in Europe, just jumping onto that jet stream and traveling all the way across to the UK, to Spain, Portugal. I mean, this is really unprecedented.
It is. We've seen an explosive start to the wildfire season. Canada's making headlines across the world because of it. And it's really making me scratch my head at some of these forecasts sometimes because, like we mentioned, it could really either make or break them. We are seeing the severe thunderstorm watches still in place, like you see behind you, Kim. And I just want to run through some of the timelines. The models were trying to really time out this event yesterday when I was having a look at it. A little bit better model consistency now. So this is around 5 o'clock. So around that commuting time home, even if you aren't heading to the cottage, the 400, maybe sections of the 401 are going to be impacted. And you can see these are very discrete cells, that circular cell. We're not talking about a line of thunderstorms. We are talking about more discrete storms. And that is possibly into that supercell characteristic. And we know with supercells, they do pack quite a punch. They have rotating updrafts, strong downdrafts, gusty winds, but it's that rotation that we could really maybe see the 1 or 2 tornadoes. So that's why it's in place, just because of these discrete cells popping up. But again, this is going to be through your 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then into 6 o'clock hour, maybe making its way into the northern GTA by 7-ish. That could also maybe clip Milton as well, sections of Brampton. So there's your timing for this event. I know it may be not looking like much, but these storms could be quite strong, like we were mentioning.
Let's dive into the discrete cell
Yeah.
situation for a moment, because it sounds like these storms know how to keep a secret, but that's not really what being a discrete storm is. It is a meteorological term that we use, but maybe not everybody knows what you mean when you're saying, well, this is a discrete storm versus, say, a linear storm. So let's teach them now, Rachel.
So a discrete storm is a storm that's just hanging out on its own, kind of like a loner. It's not touching any of the other storms. It's like I said, just kind of by itself. But a linear storm is when, you know, we have a front passing through and they kind of line out and they clump together, and they often produce very gusty winds, and you can really see them coming with shelf clouds on the ground. But discrete storms are a little bit more isolated in nature. So not everybody's going to be seeing these thunderstorm impacts because of the isolated in nature storms that we have on deck today. But if you do see them, it's going to be quite an impact, and it once again is very tricky to forecast.
I have a video here. This is what I took earlier today in Hamilton. It starts with my dog Faye, but oh, she's gone now. But anyway, this is the local school. School's out for the summer, Rachel. I'm sure the kids are excited, but the school's out, but the smoke is in. Look at these hazy skies. I mean, it's tricky. This is still a little farther in the upper atmosphere. The beginning of June, when it was really smoky, you could smell it. It smelled like wood fire that somebody was burning. But I'm not smelling the smoke like I did in the early part of June, but I'm certainly seeing it. It's very hazy. And for people who do have respiratory issues, lung, heart, maybe the elderly, the very young, if you're pregnant, if you're working outside, these are the kind of people you don't want to be outside for an extended period of time, because this can certainly have an impact on your health.
Yeah, and even some of my field hockey games were canceled because of this smoke. Not ideal to be outside doing activities or enjoying the summer weather that we all want to be doing, but like we said, it's going to be lingering over us for the long weekend. So if you are out and about and trying to enjoy it, make sure you're having some extra precautions. Even wearing one of those masks that we may have lingering around our homes could help and be a benefit this weekend.
Yeah, do that at the very least, especially if you're doing some exercise. I mean, for me, I can use an excuse not to be outside running or riding my bike. Other people will have no excuse not to do it, so wear a mask, it'll help, I'm thinking, because this is a particulate matter, small particulate matter, that can really get into your lungs, and you don't want to mess up your weekends. And you know, we have this reputation in Canada as having these beautiful clear skies, not when it comes to the weather necessarily, but at least when it comes to smog and smoke. But that's not the case, obviously. Now we're seeing images from all over Ontario. This is down in Windsor. They were particularly bad yesterday. Air quality numbers are very high. We're talking about 9s and 10s. So when they're up around there, or 10 plus, very dangerous for your health. When it's down around 1s, 2s, and 3s, that's where we like to be and where we will sit mostly during the summer. I find that smog has really been cut over the years because factories are not quite the same as they used to be. So things were looking good, but obviously forest fires this year have really changed things. And as you were mentioning, changing likely the dynamic of these storms. At least the potential is there. If we don't have the blue sky and that sun heating up the land, well, we may not have the big storms that we normally would have in this kind of a setup.
Well, that might even be overcome by the mugginess and the high moisture environment that we have ongoing currently across southern Ontario. Our environment's getting juicier and juicier by the minute. That lake breeze is doing its thing, triggering these storms in and around the Collingwood region currently. So that might just be enough to overcome all of that smoke. So that's why it's a big question mark. Here's a look at the thunderstorms ongoing currently, and my eyes are still set on that storm that's over Thornbury right now, making its way towards Collingwood. It does look like there could be some stronger up and down drafts. Maybe, don't want to say a bit of rotation just yet, but it is tracking into a favorable environment. So if we do get any sort of strengthening on this cell, that's what I'm keeping a close watch on, and then any further that develop as we head throughout this evening. But this is the cluster that kind of popped off around our 3-4 o'clock hour. We can you can really draw a line where that front is. So it's a very cool setup. But like we said, it's very tough to forecast, not only because of the smoke, Kim, but also these very localized features. They depend on so many small factors, like did we get that morning clearing, our wind direction, also the escarpment plays a role when we're talking about things that are maybe a kilometer in length. So these small scale features, models have a very tough time in differentiating and predicting. So that's why we're doing some nowcasting. But folks that are in and around the Collingwood region and along Highway 21 are about to be impacted by quite a bit of heavy rain.
Yeah, we've got topography, we've got Great Lakes, we've got a lot going on in Ontario when it comes to storm development. And as you mentioned, all these little tiny areas that have their own, that can have their own, very own weather setup. The thing is too, is that these storms are rolling across popular waterways where people have their boats out on a Friday before a long weekend. Places obviously like Georgian Bay and Lake Huron, people head to the beach. Now, if you're at the beach, it's one thing, you can probably hightail it out of there, at the very least get into your car. But if you're in a boat on the water, that's when it becomes a lot more problematic. Here's a look at the big picture. This is the advancing system. There's our Great Lakes. And again, stormy weather expected to continue through Friday afternoon, but we don't get much of a break through the weekend. More thunderstorms and rain anticipated Saturday and Sunday as well. I don't want to say it's a write-off of a weekend. It's certainly not. There will be lots of breaks in the storms. We're seeing lots of breaks right now. But the thing is that you have to pay attention if warnings are issued. We start with watches. Environment and Climate Change Canada issues the watch first, just so that you know it's that kind of a day that you may not want to head out or you want to get home a little bit earlier. And then the warning is time's up, you got to get inside because that storm is happening or is imminent. And Rachel, let's talk a little bit about the potential for tornadoes, because we do have that in our risk map. Environment and Climate Change Canada, we're saying it as well, that the potential was there today. Of course, if there is a tornado warning, will be issued. Again, with tornadoes, the warning comes almost at the last minute. They're very difficult to forecast well in advance. So that's why this is the time when those kinds of, not warnings, but at least the heads up are given that the potential is there.
So what we look for when we're talking about tornadoes is that change in wind direction when you think vertically from the surface into the upper layers of the atmosphere. And we also take a look at what's called our supercell potential. And you can see that flaring up right in around where those storms have already developed. So we're talking about Lake Huron shores and Georgian Bay shores up through Collingwood currently. Once again, supercells, they are stronger thunderstorms and they often produce rotating up and down drafts. We're also pretty warm, right behind a warm front indeed. So that's going to allow us, if we do get any rotation, to easily reach the surface. So we have a lot of favorable and some questionable dynamics still across southern Ontario. What I would really like to see is more synoptic scale features, some bigger scale features, like when we talk about a low pressure system and cold fronts and warm fronts. But instead, we are talking about lake breezes and topography. It's still enough, though, to get that sort of rotation. And I'm just talking back and forth with our behind the scenes meteorologist too. And that cell that I was mentioning, this one here, that's coming right out of Thornbury, making its way towards Collingwood. Where that purple is, it is experiencing some broad rotation. So we're keeping a close watch on this one. It would likely be severe warned. It should be maybe in the coming minutes, but that's one cell that's really raising my attention here. I'm looking at the velocity, so it's showing me where the wind is coming towards and away from the radar, where that tight couplet is. That's where we're seeing some of that rotation. So areas through Collingwood, we're keeping a close watch on that storm, if it makes its way over the water or not. If it stays on land, we'll have to find out in the coming moments, but you may want to gear up for quite a strong cell that's making its way towards you. And seeing how this one develops, that's going to be, I think, the storm to watch right now.
And I think that was the direction that our storm hunter Mark Robinson was going in. I know that he was headed towards Chatsworth, which is not far from Owen Sound. This is the area that he figured that the storms would fire up in. We don't have him right now because he is en route there. And of course, you can always follow Storm Hunter TWN on any of our social channels. He will be on this storm. If there's something to be seen, he will likely have his eyes on it and his camera on it as well. We have a lot of energy in the atmosphere. This is the map behind me. It's called CAPE, Convective Available Potential Energy. This is Friday, then into Saturday, because Saturday we do have the big player. We do have the big area of low pressure moving through, so it is more likely, the forecast is a little bit easier for Saturday to know that we will likely get some thunderstorms. But as you were mentioning, Rachel, it's a little more tricky today because it is lake breeze, but some of the biggest storms come as a result of that. A soupy, hot air mass, that's what we have in place. We have a little bit of cool air coming off of Georgian Bay, off of Lake Huron as well, and then these storms just pop right up. So it's not like you could see them coming for kilometers away, like you would maybe a line of storms like a derecho or something to that effect. These just pop up. They will travel, yes, but if you're just on the shoreline, that's when it becomes a little bit trickier. The good news, I think, though, too, is if they happen over water, if that's where they begin, Rachel, people who are standing on the shoreline can see that. They can see that there's a storm approaching and that it's time to get indoors. But that's exactly the kind of storms that we're seeing here. But some just forming just along that lake shore, and you don't have a ton of time.
No, and like we were mentioning, that lakeshore actually creates resistance too, and drag, and can be just enough to get more rotation. So that's why we're keeping a close watch on that one storm. I'm just taking a look at it. It's still showing some broad rotation, not too tight, but it is continuing to develop as in the coming moments. We'll keep a close watch on it. And we're not getting a lot of upper level wind support. So usually what I want to see is our jet stream or our trough digging in across Ontario to really provide that extra oomph to these storms. We're not quite seeing that same setup at the moment. However, it could be just enough, again, to get a little bit stronger winds mixing down to the surface and some stronger storms as we head into cottage country and as you head home for your commute home. So let's have a look at where that storm is continuing to go. And we have also some questions that are popping up online, Kim. Let me drag those up. So when will rain be coming for the fires in Ontario? Well, I believe the fires that are happening in Ontario are more so towards the north. It looks like areas like Timmins and Chapleau are getting a pretty good dousing of rain, but it doesn't look like we're seeing a widespread rainy system across northwestern Ontario. In fact, we do have a July outlook that's coming out, so if you want to check that out, I believe it'll be released tomorrow morning. But this area here may remain dry for most of the month, so not a lot of rain in sight for those areas that are forest fire prone. And then we also have a question that is asking, how about Alliston? So Alliston, Ontario, it's going to be very hard to really pinpoint when exactly some of these places across southern Ontario are going to see these storms. Like we mentioned, they're very isolated and discrete, that we all learned. We learned that word, discrete cells. But Alliston, I believe, is farther south, more inland of where these storms are happening currently. And just taking a look at that one bullseye that might be trickling your way, you can maybe expect that around your 5-6 o'clock hour. But like I said, you might also just be seeing some smoky skies, and these could maybe not even trickle your way. So it's going to be really a hit and miss scenario, Kim.
My suggestion would be, if you are traveling to one of these areas northward from the GTA, perhaps, maybe from Niagara, Hamilton, you're going to Owen Sound, you're going to Kincardine for the weekend, whatever it is, that you might want to leave in the morning or late tonight, because it seems like the time these storms are coming in is right around the time that a lot of people are going to want to hit the gas, because it's 5 or 6 p.m. and some of these roads are going to be inundated with heavy amounts of rain, like the 400, for example. So it's not going to be an easy drive, and especially if you're not comfortable in driving in storms. So I would suggest that. But again, these are isolated storms. Not everyone's going to see them. You might get through one pretty quickly, but it also can be dangerous.
Yeah, it can be really dangerous if you're not expecting them and they just trickle across your neck of the woods, especially when you're driving, especially late at night as well. You don't really see them coming. So the best thing you can do is just prepare to have a slower drive if you need to. And here's a little bit of timing for each of the roadways that will be affected, that are going to be quite busy, like we mentioned, Friday of a long weekend. And I want to point out that it's not only really this area that's going to be affected by these storms, it's really all across southern Ontario. So just a forecast for everybody that's across Ontario, we're going to continue to see these storms firing up, but I'm also looking at areas through Windsor, Sarnia, Chatham, but they could be late at night. So just maybe waking up to loud bangs or lots of lightning. We could see some of those storms through London as well, maybe into the GTA Friday overnight. So it does look like this could not only be a Friday afternoon and evening event, but for some, those overnight storms could be on deck.
Okay, so I take it back. Just go in the morning, forget the late night business. It looks like it's not going to be any better. Sometimes these storms tend to fizzle when we lose our daylight, but in this case, it looks like they're going to be nocturnal, staying up all night on a Friday like a 19-year-old kid, and that's not, well, they're going to sleep in on Saturday, so that's good news. We've got Saturday morning, we're good. We can get out of here. I'm not me in particular, but if you are traveling, Saturday morning should be fine, but in the meantime, right now we're looking at a stormy Friday evening, Friday afternoon drive. But Saturday morning looks a little bit more stormy in eastern Ontario, Rachel.
Yeah, Saturday is going to also be bringing in some severe thunderstorms. If you're thinking about going potentially to Ottawa to see some of the fireworks or festivities for Canada Day, because that is on Saturday, or you're just having a barbecue, well, this is what Saturday looks like, more so eastern Ontario, and that includes Ottawa and up the St. Lawrence as well. Scattered thunderstorm activity yet again. We might be adding that possibility of rotation yet again. Seeing how today plays out, there is the chance more so for areas in Quebec, less in eastern Ontario. But that is what your Saturday looks like. But currently, having a look across southern Ontario, we do see some pretty impactful thunderstorms making their way through. There is a question online, when will there be thunderstorms in London, Ontario? And I just mentioned that, but I'll reiterate it again. It does look like some areas across southwestern Ontario, including London, could be impacted by some thunderstorms, more so later at night. So we're talking about 10, 11, 12 in the morning. So some late night storms. If you are a maybe quiet sleeper, you may want to put those earphones in or earbuds, because that could maybe wake you up. Lots of lightning as well overnight. But in the short range, we are talking about your Friday afternoon and evening. That's where we have the abundance of daytime heating, and that's where we could get into some larger hail. And when we talk about the scale of hail, we're getting close to that golf ball size, and it's not really something we commonly seen across the Great Lakes, Kim. We usually more so see those windy systems, lots of rain because we have a lot of moisture. All of that is still on deck, but that hail size, that really threw me for a loop.
And who knows more about Ontario storms than our storm hunter, Mark Robinson. And we've got him now. Earlier, when we were watching, at least you and I were watching, Mark, he didn't have any rain on his windshield, but that has certainly changed. Mark, tell us about your drive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what, Kim, I'm headed across towards Thornbury, sort of following these two cells. It's been very interesting to watch these ones go. And right now, we're just sort of stuck in the rain as I'm headed to, east. And hopefully you can still hear me.
Okay, so apparently we're having technical issues. I could hear
him as well.
I could hear Mark, but I guess nobody else could. Is that right, Dan? Because I could hear him no problem.
Oh, dear.
Okay, he's going to try to get you back, Mark. That's what we're live, so there you go. There's proof right there. Okay, okay, so we're going to, Dan, let me know what's going on, because Rachel and I can hear him, and if you think that we've got him and our audience can hear him, that's more important than the two of us hearing him. Mark driving right now through one of these storms that we've been showing on radar. We're going to bring him back up again. There we go. Okay, Mark, let's try this again.
Oh, can you hear? If you can hear me, yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting day. But you cannot see anything today. Quite often, I can see the storms, no problem. even in southern Ontario, but because of the smoke today, you can't see anything. It's just gray wall on gray, and that's it. I can see a little bit of stuff here and there, but now I'm in the core of this storm, headed towards Collingwood, and just watching this storm, and wow, I'll tell you, the storm out near Collingwood has definitely got my attention. Lots and lots of lightning on that one, combined with some rotation. But I have a friend of mine who's over there. He can't see much, but he said there's so much lightning. So that's the one that he's been saying, be very careful. And of course, as it's headed, the more dangerous part of that storm, headed towards Collingwood, definitely something that we have to pay attention to.
Okay, and so where are you right now?
I am near a town called Walters Falls, and I'm headed eastbound towards Collingwood now.
Okay, and yes, I mean, it looks like it is 8 o'clock at night when we see that sky. Obviously, it's gray for two reasons. We've got the storm that's happening right now that you're driving through, plus the smoke, the impact of those wildfires burning in Northern Ontario and Quebec as well. So how difficult is that going to make your job today?
Nearly impossible. I have to be pretty much underneath the storm to see anything. And of course, if you're underneath the storm, you're also in the biggest danger area. So this is one of these things you have to be very, very careful with. And so my goal is to get towards Ravenna, then over towards Collingwood, to get under that first cell. These storms aren't moving very quickly, so I do have a shot at getting there, and we'll see how it goes when I get there. Simply because these storms did have that potential for being supercells and rotating.
Yeah, and that makes it a little scarier when people can't see it from far away. If we had some blue sky, at least some breaks here and there, you would have a better look at what was happening. But obviously, this is making it a little scarier, to be sure. And if you are having issues seeing these storms, then other people may have issues seeing them as well. Thanks, Mark. We'll check in with you again. Drive safe. It's not looking great out there, to be sure. These are the storms that we've been following. Rachel Monestino has been on them as well as they develop along the shores of Lake Huron, racing towards the shores of Georgian Bay right here. These areas are under severe thunderstorm watch, but no warned storms yet at this point in time. Warnings are issued when we have certain criteria. The winds have to be a certain speed, 90 or more. The hail has to be a certain size. The rain has to be coming down at a certain pace. So all of these things go into issuing watches and warnings, and sometimes different provinces have different criteria with these storms. Currently, watches in the north around Chapleau, and then in the south around Huron, Perth, Wingham, Barrie, Orillia. This is an area of Ontario that is very, very popular in the summertime. Certainly popular in the winter for some too, who do a little skiing up here. But right now, people will be heading north to these areas along the beach. They have their cottages. Some cases they may be doing some camping. So this is not an ideal situation with the storm we just saw. Rachel, looking at that, what were you thinking at that sky that Mark was driving in?
I knew it. Yep. That's exactly what I thought. Looking at that storm, I was thinking that was the most healthy looking storm, and the broad rotation has weakened a bit, but it's still there. So seeing how that kind of develops over the coming days, but it looks like it's, or the coming minutes, I meant to say, but it looks like it's really hugging the lakeshore, so hugging Highway 26, really about to be overhead Collingwood. And it does show that it is packing a lot of lightning. We're seeing strikes in the 100 region, and like you saw, it's going to be one of those days where you are driving and you see it kind of looking smoky and muggy and hazy, but the heavy downpours are really not going to help the visibility on the roadways.
Yeah, no kidding. And I love these products that we have that can really zoom in and show what's going on, including the lightning. When we're looking at those little white stripes, yes, that indeed, it's very subtle. That is our lightning. And look at that. When we tilt it a little bit, you can really see how much lightning is on these storms. And whether they are warned or not, we know that lightning is very dangerous, and you want to be indoors just for that reason. And I can tell you, Rachel, I hate to drive in a snowstorm. I hate to drive in a blizzard. I don't like bad weather in general, and this is very similar to that. So when you get these downpours, the visibility isn't great. The windshield wipers are flying. People are not quite paying attention because it's time for their holidays, so they're not really thinking clearly at times, and then you get yourself into a problem situation.
And another thing that Mark mentioned was the storm are moving quite slowly, so we could really pick up quite a bit of rainfall with these storms. If that falls on the roadways, we're talking about pooling on the roadways, and a really messy situation to drive in. So you're not only dealing with low visibility, but slippery conditions as well. With these slow-moving thunderstorms, tapping into the humid environment that we were talking about earlier, the feels like in the upper 20s across this region, that just provides a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, and any thunderstorms that are going to really kickstart are going to tap into that. So no surprise that they're seeing heavy rainfall, but I'd like to see how much rain is picked up in Collingwood once this one goes through.
And you were saying you didn't know how big of a player the smoke would be versus the heat and humidity. It's like one works towards big storms and one works against them. This is just outside of our studios. We just want to show you what the sky looks like. Ooh. Air quality advisories are in effect across much of Ontario because of that smoke. We're used to it now, it seems. We had a bout of it in early June. We're right back in it again. The air quality index is going to be fairly high. This is over the next few days. Friday night 6, Saturday 5, and then 4 on Saturday night. That's for the Greater Toronto area. Then Muskoka, it's very bad right now. Friday night 7, and then we're expecting a little bit of an improvement through the weekend. I'd like to see those 4s, Rachel, much better than those 8s and 9s.
Well, it's also better not only for our health, but also forecasting, because like I said, we've been weighing the pros and cons with how the smoke is going to play a role in these storms. And it looks like currently what it's doing is inhibiting the storms from really taking all of that thunderstorm energy and exploding that vertical height that we're used to seeing with these discrete storms. It's just not there yet. So it could be putting a little bit of a lid on the storms that are developed right now. Again, if we have enough of that thunderstorm energy and a little bit more of that clearing from the smoke, it's really only going to take a snap for those storms to get into that severe category. So at the moment, that's kind of what I'm seeing. However, that could really change in mere minutes. We have all the ingredients present, so that's why we're live streaming, and that's why we have the potential for the larger hail and maybe that rotation too.
You know, it's funny to find any kind of positive with smoke and poor air quality, but it is a positive if it means that it's going to put a little bit of a damper, a little bit of a lid on the biggest storm potential that we have today. So that's good news. I know storm chasers love to see a good thunderstorm, and I understand that, but for the most part, it's not a great thing to have, and especially with so many people on the road in such a popular spot on a Friday of a long weekend. So yes, the smoke is a big player in this situation. We're encouraging people not to be outdoors for any length of time, especially if you're doing anything strenuous with the sky conditions that we've been seeing. Let's bring in Faye, Rachel.
Okay,
there she is. We're going for a slow walk as usual, and there's the sky in Hamilton at the local school, which is now out for the summer. It's quiet in my neighborhood now. The kids aren't out for recess, but look at that sky. It's just, yeah, has nothing to do with cloud cover. It has everything to do with smoke, and that's why there are air quality statements issued across much of Ontario.
And it's not just the GTA in Southern Ontario dealing with the smoke, it's also cottage country and areas in Northern Ontario. And we do have a severe thunderstorm warning now for areas in through, I believe, Kapuskasing, Hearst, and Timmins as well. So just having a look at this complex of storms, the severe thunderstorm warning is going to pop in right here. There it is. It's just those storms strengthening with some of that daytime heating. We usually get the strongest storms when we head into our 4-5 o'clock hour. So again, I'm not surprised with that. And with that, we could see heavy downpours. You're looking at lots of lightning again, as well as potential for hail. So those that are traveling around Highway 11, Kapuskasing through Timmins, that's where that complex of storms is going to continue. And this is our low pressure system. So we'll be keeping a close watch on how these storms kind of rotate around this more broader synoptic scale feature. But looking back across Southern Ontario, I'm just seeing just getting word on this storm here. I believe it's this one that is still experiencing some rotation. I'm going to keep a close look on that one, and I'll update shortly here, Kim. But like we mentioned, that severe thunderstorm warning is in central Ontario, and we're going to be tracking this one across southern Ontario in the coming moments. Just need a few seconds to look at the radar here.
Okay, and here's the one in the north again. So Timmins, Kapuskasing, another great spot for people who really like to head north along Highway 11. These two cities currently under that severe thunderstorm warning. Other areas like Chapleau under the watch in yellow. So that's the difference. The watch meaning, yes, we have conditions that are favorable for storms. The warning meaning they are happening now. And that's why right now we are under a warning for Kapuskasing and Timmins. So you're going to want to get indoors, obviously. Maybe you're watching this somewhere else. On YouTube, obviously, that's where people are currently tuned in. But again, severe thunderstorm warnings can bring heavy amounts of rain, very strong winds, frequent lightning. Hail is a potential as well. And then we were talking about the potential for tornadoes, which come from severe thunderstorms. So not every severe thunderstorm will produce a tornado, but you always kind of have to be alert with storms like these. So Northern Ontario, severe thunderstorm warning, Timmins and Kapuskasing, the watch is in place. And we also have watches obviously in place farther south around Cottage Country in Southern Ontario. Rachel, I mean, I'm a little surprised that we don't have any warned storms in the south considering the cells that we've been looking at, but that could change.
Yeah, I think it could change because that storm that Mark was passing through, the rotation has tightened. So what that means is that it was kind of broad, but the tightening of that rotation, that's showing me that we could maybe getting into more so funnel clouds, some larger hail. It's just passed through Thornbury. It's really continuing its travels along Highway 26 right along the lakeshore. Like we mentioned, the lakeshore also provides a little bit of that resistance, so a change of wind direction is definitely possible. I'm looking at its velocity heading towards Collingwood still, like we mentioned, very slow moving, but the rotation has gotten tighter. So that's making me a little bit worried with this cell because it's also not severe warned. And if it is rotating, heading towards Collingwood, folks definitely need to watch out for this one.
Yeah, that can get really scary very quickly. When we talk about tight rotation, we think about a figure skater, and the tighter they are when they're doing their spins, the quicker they're turning. You know, if their arms are out, they slow right down. So these wider rotations, not as dangerous typically, but when we get these tight rotations, that's when, you know, things can turn quickly from a severe thunderstorm into a tornado.
Yeah, and I'm also just taking a look at the hail locator. This is just where the product is estimating where the hail is going to be picked up. And like I mentioned, just as it passed through Thornbury, it picked up a little bit of juiciness, and you can see that right along Highway 26, even over the lake as well. So we are talking about a storm that is quite mature and strong. And with that rotation possibility, this is going to be the one to watch. Have a look. You can see those dark purples. I'll take off all the lighting because it is really a big lightning show here. But when you see those dark reds and purples, that's also in showing you not just the hail potential, but also how severe the rain is. So the darker the reds, the darker the purples, the heavier downpours that are probably experienced through Thornbury heading towards Collingwood in the coming moments.
Yeah, if people are in cars, this is the kind of weather where you're pulling over to the side of the road. I've seen it many times where people just give up. They're like, I can't see. And if you're driving, and it's almost like you're blind. It's like you're driving in a blizzard when it's heavy rain. And we know that Mark was driving towards Collingwood. He knew where that storm was slowly moving, as you were saying. So now we're talking about poor visibility, but the potential for ponding on the roads as well. And when we get ponding, we can get hydroplaning. I know I'm just the bearer of great news, but I'm a doomsayer. But that's what the concern is with these storms. And We can show you watches and warnings all day long and radar too, but when you are in it, it feels very intense. And I always find rain is more intense when you're driving versus out of the car in general. So when we're talking about driving in this kind of scenario, it can get very dangerous, and that hail wouldn't help anything.
No, it's that would just make matters worse, especially if you're outside, because this whole little complex is headed towards Wasaga Beach. So maybe those of you that kind of got the jump on the long weekend and already headed up to the cottage, well, you may not want to be on the Georgian Bay shores, especially through the beach areas right now. This does look like it'll clear up maybe in the coming hour, but that hail, you can see the arrow of that storm direction. I'm not quite convinced it's moving towards the east. I think it's more so going to be sagging a little bit this way because of that lake breeze. So like I mentioned, if you already headed up to the cottage, you will be impacted by this maybe in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But if you are on your way and this is headed towards you, it's a good idea to maybe pull over. One time I had to do that, and I pulled over into a Timmy's, got myself a little pick-me-up, and then was on my way once it passed. So it's not a bad idea, because like we mentioned, that storm right there through Collingwood, that one's looking quite strong. And it's still really holding a lot of its strong characteristics.
You know, a lot of police will be on the roads this weekend. They always go up on a Friday, especially. OPP will be lining all the major highways around southern Ontario and certainly up towards cottage country as well. So I mean, they're going there in general because we don't want people driving too fast. We don't want people drinking and driving, certainly. We don't want people being obnoxious on the roads. And then that is just on a perfectly good weather Friday of a long weekend. But now we're adding these storms in places that are extremely popular. Beautiful beaches up around Collingwood and Aurelia, Owen Sound, lovely. But again, if you're outdoors in one of these storms, it's not going to be lovely at all. It can get very scary very quickly. You don't want to be in a boat, especially if there's lightning. There's a lot of things to consider. And this is just the beginning of the weekend, Rachel. We're going to be looking at a weekend full of potential storms. Right now, we have one warning in place. If you look on the map, it's northern Ontario, so Timmins and Kapuskasing along Highway 11 under a severe thunderstorm warning. We are seeing some intense storms in southern Ontario, not warned currently, but under a watch, and perhaps should have been warned, Rachel?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't have the playbook of Environment Canada as to what they need for these storms to be warned, but just looking at the radar and that rotation that's continuing to be underway, it's definitely one that could be, maybe should be. But having a look at where we are going to possibly see where those warnings show up is in these orange highlighted regions where severe thunderstorms may be possible. We've seen that up through Timmins and Kapuskasing, like you showed, Kim, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that across southern Ontario. So the cottage country, Lake Huron shores, you're more so on deck for your Friday evening, and then Sarnia through to Chatham, London area, that's more so going to be a little bit behind schedule. So more overnight storms headed your way, but they still could pack quite a bit of a punch. We've seen all of that heavy rain. We've seen that hail being picked up, lots of lightning as well. So we'll continue to track this for today, and likely if you're, out at your cottage and maybe seeing some of this rain, you can't go outside to enjoy it, well, check back with us, because we're probably going to be doing lots of streaming and lives throughout this weekend on Saturday too, because I have a suspicion that we could maybe see some supercells trickling across eastern Ontario and Quebec as well.
Yeah, it's not over yet, that's
No.
for sure. And we will be covering the storms all weekend long here at the Weather Network, just outlining again the difference between a watch and a warning. Severe thunderstorm watch means that the potential is there for severe weather. So stay alert, because again, it means the ingredients are there in the atmosphere. Not necessarily everybody will see a storm, but the potential is there. And then the next thing that would happen would be a warning, and not everyone will get one. A warning is usually a smaller area, and a severe thunderstorm warning is issued when a storm is happening or is imminent. So as I was mentioning earlier, it is on your doorstep. And the same thing really with a tornado warning. A tornado warning means that either someone, a storm spotter, has seen a tornado on the ground, or forecasters are looking at the radar and seeing rotation on the radar. So in that case, it's not an absolute, but tornadoes are tricky, and not every severe thunderstorm will produce a tornado, but when it does, it happens fast, and you just need to be aware that that could happen. Rachel, this is one of those scenarios where we thought possible rotation on these storms. You were looking at the radar, it looked like it could be. Smoke is certainly one of those elements that just throws a wrench in the whole forecast business today, because again, with smoke, it does something different to the atmosphere where we may not see the biggest storms, but I don't know, it's battling hard with that hot and juicy air mass.
Yeah, it's the battle between the thunderstorm energy and the smoke that's going on across southern Ontario. Who will win? Well, it's still up in the air. It looks like to me the smoke is still winning. However, I'm still seeing some rotation on that storm. So if it's rotating, then that means that it's quite mature and strong in nature. We're also looking at another one that's just beside it, not the one that's impacting Collingwood, but one that's over Kimberley, Ontario, heading towards Sighampton. That one's picking up strength as well, so maybe feeding off of some of the energy of the one that we were just mentioning, but this one here is also picking up steam. So really both of these storms are the two to watch across southern Ontario, and like I mentioned, we're likely going to be seeing more of these storms because of how juicy the environment is. This is what your Saturday looks like, but we're not going to jump there just yet. Having a look currently at what our thunderstorm energy is producing, well, we're starting to see maybe some of those orange and reds trickle into southwestern Ontario. I'm just going to take off the clouds so you can see it a little bit better. There it is. So you can see those reds that are building in too. All we really need is a trigger, so a little bit of a lake breeze. That's all you need to really make some of these thunderstorms pop. But I do believe that smoke is keeping the lid on these storms. So I mean, good news that we're not seeing some severe thunderstorm warnings, but I would not count out for the rest of the evening that we're not going to be seeing any.
You're mentioning the criteria. So this is the criteria for issuing a severe thunderstorm warning. Wind gusts of 90 kilometers per hour or more. Hail 2 centimeters or larger in diameter. We don't always see that to get these severe thunderstorms, at least not the warnings. And then heavy rain as per rainfall criteria. So it depends on where you are. For Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec, it is 50 millimeters of rain per hour. And in some of these storms, it looks like they could be seeing some very heavy rain because primarily they are moving so slowly. They are lumbering along. If a tornado warning is issued where you are, best locations in a home. The main thing you have to remember is get to the bottom floor wherever you are. Get to a bottom floor, get away from windows. That's where you don't want to be. So an interior room, something like a closet, something like a bathroom, a bathtub is always good, a blanket over your head, a light mattress over your head, anything that would prevent something falling on you or hurting you. Now, we haven't seen any really strong tornadoes recently. The tornadoes so far that have touched down in Canada this season have been weak, thankfully, but it's always good to know, especially at the beginning of the season, what you need to do in case a tornado warning is issued. And I know if people are in, say, a campground, you're going to want to go to the main reception area. They usually have a nice solid building where you can get to safety if you happen to be out in the woods. And of course, if you have a car nearby, that would be a better place to be than in, say, a tent, for example. And that's where these storms are happening today, Rachel. We're talking about storms that are in areas where people go to camp, where people go to the beach, on their boat, go fishing, and certainly to their cottages.
Well, Kim, I think the universe heard us when we were talking about these
Oh.
two storms, because they're now severe warned.
We've got the warnings.
We've got
Okay.
the warning. Then that's issued for Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County, Barrie, Collingwood, Hillsdale. So it is those two storms that we were mentioning. The risks do include nickel to ping pong sized hail, wind gusts excessive of 90 kilometers per hour, and they do put in the risk of a tornado. So it's like they heard us when we were talking about rotation. That is issued, so that's some good news. So folks will be aware of this storm if they have reception. Hopefully they get some alerts if they're driving up through this region. So that is new development. We'll continue to see if that rotation can still hold on. It does look like it is still present.
Okay, so yeah, as we spoke, you saw it. I know that meteorologists and Climate Change Canada saw it as well, so that's where our warning is too. So it's hugging the southern shores of Georgian Bay this hour. The area in red, that is where our severe thunderstorm warning is. Around it, we just have a severe thunderstorm watch at the moment. And again, in northern areas of Ontario, Kapuskasing and Timmins also under a severe thunderstorm warning right now. So that's good. Yes, when there's a warning in place, the alerts will go off on the phone. You'll certainly see it on TV, perhaps listen to it on the radio. It'll cut in as well. These alerts are obviously important. It's dangerous to be out in a severe thunderstorm warning. I think a lot of people would have heard this storm long before they heard an alert on their phone. They would have heard the thunder, and anybody driving in this is going to certainly be having a tough time.
Yeah, but like we mentioned, it's so hazy outside, you might not actually see it coming because it's just kind of been so gray. That's what Mark was mentioning. So hopefully they did see it, and hopefully it's not really taking many by surprise. The only thing that is taking me by surprise is that it's not really along the cold front of that low pressure system. It's that lake breeze that's still continuing to have just enough trigger where all those ingredients are coming together. You can see even those cloud tops extending out towards Barrie, so you could even maybe catch some more lightning along the 400 and darkening along the 400 too, as that it continues to extend out towards more so an easterly direction. But yeah, that lake breeze boundary, it's a very classic Southern Ontario setup. It's a sneaky setup, but that's what we're continuing to deal with, and it will maybe flare up some more thunderstorms as we head throughout our 5-6 o'clock hour.
It's almost the opposite of what happens in the fall and in the spring. Sometimes when we get the lake effect snow, we'll get it in the winter too, but it's usually before, obviously, the lakes freeze. So the lakes at that point are warmer than the land, and then they can create their own weather, and we get snowfall on the other side when we talk about lake effect snow. In this scenario, the lakes are a little bit cooler versus the land, and it's cool water, cool air, I should say, clashing with that warm air mass that is creating these storms. So we know that when it comes to weather, you always kind of need warm air rising. It's the clash of the cool and the warm that bring on the storms, and that's why we talk about lake breeze, and lake breeze having such an impact on the weather in these particular areas of southern Ontario.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a very sneaky setup, and it's difficult for models to really forecast this kind of setup too. It's something that develops throughout the day, so not a lot of leeway time as opposed to more so the bigger synoptic scale event that's going on across northern Ontario. That's more so more predictable because it's a low pressure system and it has a series of fronts that expands really province wide. So that's a little bit more, we're a little bit more able to give time ahead for storms like this, but the ones across southern Ontario more tricky because of just the smaller scale features. As we look ahead where that low is, that's where we continue to see the severe thunderstorm warnings, so Timmins and in through Kapuskasing. That is all because of that low pressure system. It's going to continue to be a feature throughout this evening. So folks along Highway 11 up in that direction, probably seeing some decent hail and some strong thunderstorms as well. Looking at southern Ontario, we are still keeping a close watch on these two cells that are in through Collingwood. I'm seeing reports on Twitter that the winds are quite calm, but the rain, the visibility is the main issue here. And then we're watching that really heavy downpour storm base making its way over through Collingwood. It does look like that second cell that is more inland is picking up steam, so likely seeing some hail with this one. And then I'll take a quick look. The rotation is still present. It is broad, but it's still there, so it does look like these storms are trying to rotate. So if you're in the path of them, you definitely want to be aware, get inside. You don't want to be out on the roads if you have the option. And they'll be slowly moving as well, so you have a little bit of lead time.
Collingwood, Blue Mountains in there, Barrie's in there as well. Still a little far away from the storm. It seems a little bit farther south at this point in time. Doesn't mean it can't happen, though. The areas currently in and do include Owen Sound as well, Blue Mountains, northern Grey County. But again, it's Collingwood that's getting hit right now. These are the areas under the warning. And Environment and Climate Change Canada talking about nickel to ping pong ball sized hail potential with this. 90 kilometer per hour winds, of course, strong winds. And the lightning seems almost relentless on these storms. Looking at the lightning data right here, those are those white spikes that you see on this particular map showing the storms really slowly moving to that southeast. And they're juicy. And when we say juicy, they're into this hot, humid air mass. And with all of this moisture in the atmosphere, it's likely teeming rain where these storms are happening. And that's why, for all of these reasons, why we have this severe thunderstorm warning now for these areas along the southern shores of Georgian Bay.
Yeah, and it's funny when you look at our risk map, that's exactly kind of where those severe thunderstorms are. So forecasting is paying out for those severe warned storms. Again, they're rather scattered in nature. So if you're in through London, you're probably wondering, well, what the heck are you guys talking about? It's all sunny here or smoky here, but that's the nature with these very isolated pop-up thunderstorms. Not everybody's going to see them, but when you do see them, they're going to be bringing quite a high impact. So this is going to be the story continuing through your 6 o'clock hour. 7 o'clock hour is when it may hit northern sections of the GTA as it makes its way further inland.
Yeah, people in the GTA are thinking, okay, well, this is not where I am. Yeah. I'm not going away this weekend. I'm staying put. But no, and you know, that's not going to be the case. And a lot of people will be outdoors in the city. Friday night, long weekend, people are going to want to hit a patio, especially if it's hot, and they could be caught unawares, hopefully not. But with these hazy skies, these smoky skies, it's hard to see these storms coming. Usually we would see these cumulus clouds starting to build, and we can look at the white versus the blue. But not in this case. Anwar Knight, one of our presenters here at the Weather Network, capturing the skies in Orangeville a little while ago. And it's just, I want to say disgusting, Rachel, because it kind of is when we have this kind of smog and smoke in Orangeville, of all places. Such a beautiful town, so green normally, and this should be a blue sky day, but obviously the forest fire smoke has other ideas.
Yeah, and it's having other ideas on other storms popping off too, kind of inhibiting any further storms to develop. Good news if you don't want to get rained on, but still very tricky to forecast. Just having a look at the current situation, the lightning is picking up on that second cell that's heading towards Sighampton or just north of Sighampton. So that one looks like it's kind of stealing the energy from that Collingwood storm. So that's going to be our new one to watch. You can see the purples. It's getting a little bit larger and pushing further inland. So this one we're going to be keeping a close watch on here. There is a little bit of rotation still with the storm, probably producing hail. Let's see if I'm right. Maybe not picking that up just yet on this hail indicator, but showing those pinks, I'm convinced there's probably some that are coming out of that storm.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about how these storms interact with one another. Oh, we do now have a tornado warning. So a tornado warning has been issued. Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County. So the severe thunderstorm warning has now been upgraded to a tornado warning for Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County. This is a storm you're looking at, Rachel, talking about the rotation on radar. That's likely why this was issued by Environment Climate Change Canada. I'm just seeing what they're saying here, tracking a severe thunderstorm that is possibly producing a tornado. Damaging winds, large hail, locally intense rainfall are all possible. And of course, this is a dangerous situation. People need to be indoors with a tornado warning, with a storm like this. I can't imagine there were many people outdoors in this storm already, but again, this can be a very dangerous situation, even life-threatening potentially. A tornado warning now issued, just updated here on my map as well, the area in pink. I know Rachel will get a closer look on this in just a moment, but again, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County are currently under a tornado warning. The area was just severe thunderstorm warned not that long ago, within the last 10 minutes or so, and now that has been upgraded to a tornado warning. Again, you're going to want to stay indoors if you are in the tornado warned area. Looks like a large part of the area that is warned, the storm has passed, but the problem is that Environment Climate Change Canada have their hands tied with these tornado warnings. They are issued in counties and in regions, and sometimes the entire region has to be put under the warning, but a small area is the area that is of concern, and we're looking right now at the radar where the storm is going. Rachel, jumping in on this.
Yeah, that's I just got a new scan from the radar, and that rotation is present. That second storm that I said was taking all the energy from the first one, it is really blown up really in one radar scan. It is heading towards areas north of Sighampton, moving quite slowly. So again, you have time to get inside. Don't stand by the windows, and if you want to try to get a shot of this storm, it's really not worth it. The glass can easily break, and it's the safest place to be is in an interior room, like you were mentioning, Kim. This is looking like quite a supercell indeed, and yeah, so areas across Sighampton, that's also an area where I go usually outdoor rock climbing, so there could be folks out there. Hopefully they're seeing this storm coming, but like you mentioned, it is tornado warned. So there's a tornado warning that tells us that this storm is likely producing a tornado. Like you mentioned, if you are towards the west, so Owen Sound, you're in the clear. Areas that already were impacted, Thornbury, this whole area, you are in the clear, but it's areas that are towards the east. So Collingwood, Stayner, Creanmore, areas, again, north of Sighampton. Sighampton is kind of in between both of those storms, or both of those locations rather. So that's probably the biggest region that is of note. Just having a closer look. Yeah, we're seeing lots of lightning on this storm still, Kim. So it is quite a healthy one indeed, possibly producing a tornado, and we're talking about life-threatening situation now.
Tornado, if people are finding themselves in this scenario at some point over the weekend, including right now, go to the nearest solid shelter, number one. Drive at a 90-degree angle away from the tornado's path. I know this is very difficult to see in the scenario that we have today with the smoky skies. Find a lower level if no shelter is nearby, and put your seatbelt on, lower your head, and cover your head with hands in the worst case scenario. So those are things to do. These are things not to do. Don't try to outrun a tornado or use unpaved roads. Try to use the paved roads as much as possible. Do not take shelter under an overpass or bridge. A lot of people will do that. It's one of the most dangerous places to be. Take shelter under a culvert, or take shelter under your vehicle. The tornado warning has now been expanded. It includes Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale. They are new to it. Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County, also under a tornado warning this hour, and most recently added Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale. Meteorologists are tracking a severe thunderstorm that is possibly producing a tornado, damaging winds, large hail, and locally intense rainfall. We've been talking about this main hazard, tornado and nickel-sized hail. That's what Environment Canada is saying right now. Locations impacted include Pretty River Valley Provincial Park, Singhampton, Devil's Glen Provincial Park, Stayner, Duntroon, Glen Huron, Creemore, and Cashtown Corners. These are the communities that will be impacted, likely impacted by this. Again, the tornado warning has been expanded to include Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale, and already in place for Owen Sound, Blue Mountain, and northern Grey County.
Yeah, putting on a high resolution model here so we can get a little bit of a closer look of that storm. Oh yeah, it just took all of the dynamics and energy and from that Collingwood storm. It really just, they merged into one real supercell. So that is our tornado warned storm. It is moving quite slowly. However, you can see, let me pause it on this last area. You can see that hook beginning to develop. Where is my writer? Here it is. You see that hook beginning to develop. So when we get that kind of hook area, that's where we see that rotation at the smaller scale. It's really hard to pinpoint. Again, we're looking at really a needle in a haystack here, but that is that area that is rotating. The storm is moving towards the eastern southeast direction. Singhampton is probably going to be one of the bigger areas that are going to be impacted, but just taking a close look at some other areas, Duntroon, Glen Huron, Nottawa, Creemore. These are areas that are going to be continuing to be impacted by this storm, making its way towards the east or southeast.
Okay, so there is our tornado warning. We kind of anticipated this was going to happen with these particular storms, but we're in a scenario that we're not used to when we add the smoke to the whole ingredients, because with the smoke, it's hard to see the storms. It's hard to see the storms coming if you're in them because the sky is so gray all around. You can't see that contrast where the storm might be building. So again, the tornado warning includes now Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, northern Grey County, and some of the areas impacted, the smaller areas. Maybe you know somebody doing some camping up here. You'd want to get in touch with them if they don't have it on their phone. An alert, I'm sure they will though. If an alert was issued, Pretty River Valley Provincial Park, Singhampton, Devil's Glen Provincial Park, Stayner, Duntroon, Glen Huron, Creemore, and Cashtown Corners are all pointed out. So if a tornado is indeed on the ground, that's going to be the biggest hazard with this, but also large hail potential, heavy rainfall to the point where we may see some pooling on the roads, and again, a lot of lightning on this storm as well. So we're seeing that little hook, it looks like, Rachel, on this radar. You noticed early that it was starting to rotate. These storms have gotten very strong very quickly.
Yeah, we got that severe thunderstorm warning and boom, tornado warnings. We also just got issued tornado watches for much of southern Ontario. I'll zoom out where you see that orange. That's where a tornado watch is now in place. So very fast moving and fast developing weather alerts that are going on. Like you mentioned, Kim, we kind of anticipated that this should be severe warned. It is now tornado warned, and glad to see that there is a tornado watch in place to get some folks along the 400 Barrie up through Midland, even Aurelia included in that, aware of the situation that is going to be making its way towards them throughout the hour. That is just telling us that this area is really primed for tornadic activity. Not saying that there is a tornado that's imminent, but saying that your environment could support tornadoes. Where the tornado is imminent is where you see the pink. That does include Barrie, but the areas that are really in the crosshairs with this storm is Singhampton. And you see a lot that's going on in this this radar. We're not really looking at the dark purples or pinks. That's showing us that that's producing hail and very strong rainfall, probably torrential rain, but it's this little hook right here. That's what we're looking for when we're talking about a storm that could produce a tornado. It usually looks, let me get this going here. It usually looks something like this. So that hook is where we're seeing that rotation. The last few scans appear that rotation has tightened up. So areas, like I said, Sighampton, it's still moving quite slowly. You have time to get inside. However, Kim, this is starting to give me a little bit of that tornadic signature. It did a couple scans ago. I'm glad that it's tornado warned now, but it continues to have that tight rotation that we want to see, but also very supercell-esque, I would say.
Yeah, and this is the worst case scenario, really, when you have a supercell tornado over an area that's very rural in general, too. People will be heading up, say, from the city, hopefully aware now that there is some severe weather happening. This is the kind of scenario where you need to get indoors as quickly as possible. You need to get away from windows. People get excited about storms. I understand that, but this can be very dangerous very quickly. And the biggest problem with tornadoes really is flying debris, and that's when people can get hurt. Lost power is a likelihood as well with these storms. So again, anyone under that tornado warning could be losing power as a result of this storm. That might be the least of your concerns at this point. And you were mentioning that the tornado watch was in place. So that is great. They are being proactive. Environment and Climate Change Canada saying if you're in one of these areas, just have a plan. Stay alert because a tornado warning could be issued. We don't often see tornado watches. I'm glad that this is happening. We usually just go with the severe thunderstorm watch or warning and say, okay, well, with a severe thunderstorm, there's always the potential that you could have a tornado being produced. So in this scenario, likely there is one. So in the area in pink, that's where we're talking about a tornado warning, and it does include Barrie and Collingwood. Owen Sound is in this tornado warning as well. And then those smaller communities and those parks that people will be at on a Friday of a long weekend, that's where there's a lot of concern. And again, I'm always saying, be weather aware, especially in the summer when you're trying to get away from it all. I know people want to turn off their cell phones and not be in touch, but this is a reason just to have that, have it close by, because if a tornado warning is issued, it will sound off on your phone and you'll be able to take the precautions that you need to in this case. So we have this hot and humid air mass. We've got this lake breeze that's coming in, and that lake breeze clashing with the air mass is what is bringing these tornadoes, or at least the potential for tornadoes. So areas all along the southern shores of Georgian Bay, that's where we're looking at this particular storm. And again, it is tracking eastward. Areas north and south to the east are all now under a tornado watch, meaning that you should be aware that a tornado could develop in your area. So it's all the same kind of setup. And how long these storms last on the ground is still kind of up in the air, Rachel, but the potential is there that if they are strong enough, they'll last a while.
Yeah, if they get all of the necessary ingredients, they can really go all night. The ingredients that we're looking at, like you mentioned, the high humidity, that moisture adds a factor to these storms. A trigger mechanism, in this case, it's a lake breeze boundary, not a cold front, but it acts very similar on a very small scale. So we have that trigger and we have that thunderstorm energy. We're also seeing some interactions with the escarpment right over that region. Topography is going to play playing a role with this storm as it makes its way towards areas like Barrie that are in the tornado watch at the moment. So if we continue to see this storm tracking into a favorable environment, then we could see this storm lasting quite a while. It is slow moving, so it is going to continue to eat up all of that energy and continue to bring quite a bit of lightning, hail as well, likely with this storm. I'm still seeing that hook aspect to it. So we can see that here, and we're going to go back to Kim with where the warnings are across southern Ontario, but not only southern Ontario, also areas in the north.
Okay, yes, Kapuskasing and Timmins are under a warning. Actually, Timmins is out of the warning right now. Kapuskasing remains in the warning, but these are the areas that are under the tornado warning. So severe thunderstorm warnings to the north, tornado warnings to the south. The areas once again include Barrie, Collingwood, northern Grey County, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and as well as Hillsdale, if I didn't mention Hillsdale earlier. In the smaller areas, Pretty River Valley Provincial Park, Singhampton, Devil's Glen Provincial Park, Stayner, Duntroon, Glen Huron, Creemore, and Cashtown Corners, all in the path of a potential tornado on the ground. If you're not under that severe or that tornado warning, you may be under the tornado watch. So areas a little farther to the east and south, like Alliston, for example. So there's our tornado warning. Here's our watch. Aurelia's under it, Midland, down towards Dundalk. So a watch means that conditions are favorable for something to develop. You may have seen that meme before with the tacos. If you have all the ingredients for the taco, there's your watch. If that taco is made, all the ingredients are in the shell, that's your warning. It's time to eat your taco. So in this scenario, we're talking about tornado watches versus warnings. Again, the warning right here where that cell has developed and is rotating, likely bringing some heavy amounts of rain. We've seen that in the past, in the last couple of hours, a lot of rain with this because it's just so humid. Nickel-sized hail, powerful winds, a lot of lightning on these storms as well, and then again, the rotation, which has been noted on radar, which is the reason why these areas are under a tornado warning, and you're going to want to be indoors if you are under a warning, and again, in that room that's the lowest in the home or building that you're in and away from windows. What a setup today, Rachel. It would have been perfect for these big storms with the exception of that smoke that came in, and that smoke is what's making the forecast that much trickier. And certainly it's trickier to even see these storms with your eyes right when you're in them.
The layers of all of these alerts and weather advisories. We have the special air quality statements layered by severe thunderstorm warnings, layered by tornado watches, layered by tornado warnings. So lots of factors going on across southern Ontario, but nonetheless, we got one cell, like we mentioned, discrete cell, the supercell, that continues to track across areas through Singhampton. That is likely or possibly producing a tornado. It is showing that tight rotation. When I'm looking at the radar, you can see the hook. It's more so in this area. If you can see my cursor here, that is showing us that the winds and the rain is wrapping around the storm rather than falling straight down. So that is why the storm is tornado warned. Well, where is it going? Really anybody in this path here could be impacted by the cell if it continues to produce.
Okay, that's a look at the radar close up. Our severe thunderstorm warnings are expanding in northern Ontario as well. Timmins is back in the warning to the north. Let's take a look at what's happening around the south. So again, severe thunderstorm warnings in the north now. Timmins is back in the warning. Chapleau is still in the watch. It looks like Gogama, Folliet might be in the warning. Farther south, there's our tornado warning, including Collingwood, and Barrie is in that. Hillsdale as well, northern Grey County. In the Brown area, that is our tornado watch. So basically meaning that conditions are favorable. We have already seen that. If there is a tornado on the ground right now where that tornado warning is, then it's likely that other tornadoes may develop from these storms. And again, that tornado warning is all along the southern shores of Georgian Bay, spreading all the way towards Barrie. Here's our watch. Again, this is the time to get prepared for a possible tornado. If you're in the watch, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to see one, but it's the time to get ready in case one does hit. You want to be indoors. If you have friends outside, you have friends camping, that kind of thing, just make sure they're alert and they excuse me, and they know what's going on, because these storms can get dangerous in a very fast period of time. And with the sky conditions that we have been seeing all day and for the last couple of days with this hazy smoke, it's very tricky to see what's happening. We had our storm hunter on just a little while ago. As he was driving in it, it looked like it was evening time. It was hard to see any discernment between what was going on in the sky. It was all gray. I mean, you could have a major storm come upon you and not even see it coming versus what we would normally see with these building cloud tops. Okay, I'm going to throw it back to Rachel. We're getting our tech all set up again. We've been live for quite a while now. It's been what, about an hour and a half or so, and as a result, I mean, we had to change batteries and things, Rachel.
Yeah, the batteries not lasting more than an hour. That's too bad, but we will last more than an hour, that's for sure.
You sound good now.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to paint a big picture of what's going on, just to remind everybody across Ontario, we still have ongoing storms across central regions of the province along Highway 11 through Kapuskasing, with a low pressure system in front that is continuing to slowly make its way across the Great Lakes. We did get a question on YouTube. What is this front going to bring when it makes its way over across southern Ontario? Well, it will be bringing some rumbles of thunder, some lightning, but because of the timing and its slow movement, it's going to be a little bit delayed. So we'll see that tornado threat pass, but you can see that more line of thunderstorms that will be impacting areas like Sarnia, London, up through maybe Guelph. That's more so for your Friday overnight, as that really frontal system makes its way through, pushing in some of that more thunderstorm activity across the southwest. But for the time being, we are continuing to look at southern Ontario. This is what we were advertising, the scattered thunderstorms with the hail, the winds, one or two tornadoes, and that's exactly what we've been seeing, especially for areas in and around Sighampton. You mentioned Devil's Glen, Kim. That is the area that I went rock climbing in. So lots of crown land out there and campers, people that may be in tents, so very dangerous situation that's ongoing for folks there. But like we mentioned, with our forecast, it is validating with the tornado watches and warnings in place, but also some of the visuals on Twitter.
Yeah, this is Mark Robinson out and about and storm chasing too. We had him earlier, and this is what he was capturing on Twitter. So he had a rapidly rotating wall cloud near Collingwood now. So this, he just issued or put this out a little while ago, and here is a look at the storm. And yes, so again, this is the reason why we have a tornado warning in Collingwood as we speak. By the way, we do not want you outdoors in a storm like this. We know that Mark Robinson knows what he is doing when it comes to storm chasing. He knows where to be in a storm. He is a professional storm chaser, and so that makes it easier for him. But of course, when you're not a professional storm chaser or meteorologist, we want you to be indoors. We want you to be safe. In a tornado warning, these storms can be very dangerous, and if you don't have a good sight of where they are or what direction they're going in, even more importantly, then you're going to just want to be indoors, away from any windows. Get in one of those interior rooms like a closet or a bathroom if you don't have a basement. But basements are always the best place to be in the case of a tornado. And again, these storms have some heavy rain on them. This is a place in Ontario where people go to for a long weekend. A lot of cars would have been driving up towards Barrie and Collingwood. There are provincial parks in this area as well. So this is all leading to a potentially very dangerous scenario just along the shores of Georgian Bay. Okay, we've got something else here. Okay, nothing new on this one, I don't see. Tornado warning. Okay, so again, Environment and Climate Change Canada just reiterating, I guess, Owen Sound, Blue Mountain, Northern Grey County, Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale all under this tornado warning. At 5:48 p.m., Environment Canada meteorologists tracking a severe thunderstorm that is possibly producing a tornado. Again, locations impacted include Singhampton. You've been talking about that area. I'm hoping I'm saying it right. Devil's Glen Provincial Park. I talked about people being out in tents for this weekend. So that's one of the areas that could be potentially in the path of this tornado. Duntroon, Glen Huron, Rob Roy has been added, Dunedin, Websterville, and Smithdale. So Environment Canada with their new tornado warning. So it's the same area that has been warned, but they're just adding some new information now into that tornado warning. So the areas, again, I'm going to go through them once more. You're in this tornado warning if you are in Singhampton, Devil's Glen Provincial Park, Duntroon, Glen Huron, Rob Roy, Dunedin, Websterville, and Smithdale. And again, if you are in one of these communities, you're going to want to be indoors because these storms can get very, very dangerous. We talked about the air quality already. With the smoke, it means that you may not see these storms coming. We thought the smoke might have, at least might be a player in keeping these storms a little weaker. We've obviously seen that storms can be severe in this scenario. We may have had more as a result of, or if it was less smoky, but as it stands, we have enough already. So southern areas of Georgian Bay currently under a tornado warning. This is a cool lake breeze that is clashing with hot and humid air. And when we get those two air masses coming together, that's when you can see severe thunderstorms, if not tornadoes. And in this case, Rachel has been watching this rotation on these storms and noticed, obviously, that there could be a tornado on the ground. And warnings have been issued by Environment and Climate Change Canada. Some people say to us, Rachel, why didn't you issue a warning for me? Or why am I not in the warning? Or why didn't you drop the warning, et cetera, et cetera? We are the messenger in this case. Environment Climate Change Canada is a government body that is responsible for all watches and warnings in this country, and we're here to let you know when one is issued and when they're dropped. So that's why we don't have control, but we can tell you where the risk is, and we can certainly tell you what's happening as it's happening.
Yeah, and it was interesting, right where we pointed out that risk, those warnings and watches just tumbled on in one after another. Just taking a look at the radar, this is a very textbook supercell hook echo is what it's called for all those weather nerds. But this is a very classic radar signature for a tornadic supercell. We have that other cell that's more towards the north that's kind of splitting out of it. So that's showing me that this storm is mature enough to really have that splitting cell. One's moving in one direction, one's moving in the other direction. But if you're looking at this radar, a lot of people, you know, they look at those purples right in the center and they're saying that's where the tornado is. But in fact, that's not where the tornado is. That's where the heaviest amount of rain is. The tornado is where it wraps around. So right in here, this is where we're seeing that signature for a tornado, because the rain is actually wrapping around the storm rather than outwards, where you're seeing those purples and reds extending out towards Creemore. So where is this storm headed? Just taking a look at a few cities. I know the warning area is large, but I'm going to once again stress Singhampton is the next area that is on deck. It looks like this hook is headed right towards your direction. So what that means is it's likely wherever the tornado is, well, the highest possibility where the tornado is heading right towards you. So if you know anybody in Singhampton, maybe headed up to Devil's Glen, maybe out camping, this is a very, very bad news scenario. It will continue to move in this direction, more of a southeasterly direction. So areas that are going to be wanting to get inside, well, anyone who's in the tornado watch, but I can maybe include Alliston, Creemore, it looks like, if you follow this storm's path. So just giving those of you a heads up that this storm is coming. And it's really the only storm that's firing up across southern Ontario, as you can see. That's what we were mentioning, a discrete storm, a supercell. It doesn't need any other form of a trigger or other storms to make it strong. It is strong enough on its own. So once again, Singhampton is going to be the area to be concerned of, Kim, in southern Ontario.
Okay, and that's not the only spot in the country that is under a tornado warning. And now we have parts of Alberta in a tornado warning, and they include Brazeau County near Drayton Valley and Breton, the county of Wetaskiwin near Alder Flats and Winfield. So these areas right now in pink in Alberta under a tornado warning. That was our other area of concern, of course, today. The thunderstorm motion is towards the southeast at 30 kilometers per hour, and communities in the path include Alder Flats and Buck Lake. Those are the areas that are in the immediate path of a possible tornado. Again, the tornado is what has been seen on Doppler radar. So it indicates a potential tornado 10 kilometers north of Alder Flats. That's what the warning is saying now with Environment Climate Change Canada. We know that our meteorologist Jacqueline Whittall is on these storms as well. So she's been watching these on television, covering what's going on in Ontario and in Alberta too. So again, this is the other area that we thought might see severe weather today, and it was Alberta. In fact, we were almost convinced, thought maybe they would come in a little bit later, but here they are now. And again, a tornado warning for Brazeau County near Drayton Valley and Breton, and County of Wetaskiwin near Alder Flats and Winfield. This storm is moving 30 kilometers per hour southeast, and communities in the path include Alder Flats and Buck Lake this hour. We're going to go see Mark Robinson, our storm hunter, who has been following the tornado-warned storms in Ontario. So we're jumping back to this province. I see, Mark, that you're pulled over. I saw your tweet as well. We've seen your tweet on Twitter, obviously, showed it on the air here. So do we have his mic? As you say, we do not. Oh, okay.
Have you guys got me? You should have me.
Oh, we've got him up now. Okay.
You are, Kim, you're looking directly into the area of rotation. And there's been some very, very strong rotation on that. It's pulling past me now, so that we're getting into what we call the hook itself. And this is the rain sort of wrapping itself around the tornado, or the potential tornado. I have not seen anything on the ground yet, but very, very strong rotation right ahead of us. And that's something I'm watching very closely, and I'll probably pull ahead now so that we can get into clear air and be able to see that again. So you may lose me here, but hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. Wow, it looks like almost a night sky, which is what we expect with these storms, tornado-warned storms in Ontario. Rachel, people have been wanting to know what they should be doing in a case like this. Of course, Mark is a trained storm hunter. He is a storm chaser. He knows where to be and how to chase a tornado. But of course, not everybody does. And we would prefer that you are not in your car if you're under a tornado warning. If you're in a home, you want to get into the lowest room in the home, a basement. You want to get away from windows. It's flying debris that can cause the most injuries when it comes to a rotating storm like this one. Heavy downpours, hail, all of this goes along with it. But you want to get into a lower floor, and you also want to get away from windows. A closet is a good idea. A bathroom is a good idea. A bathtub, even better. And again, you don't want to park under an overpass. That's a dangerous place to be in a storm like this. Certainly in a tornado-warned storm, that's not what you want to do. And again, stay on the roads that are paved if you can, and drive away from the tornado, not in the path of the tornado, not along with it, but at a 90-degree angle away from the tornado so that you are in a safe spot. Rachel, these storms are very dangerous. We have warnings and watches on them. And what do you think of that sky that Mark has his camera on right now?
Well, you can see the lowering of the clouds, and like he mentioned, that the fact that it is rotating, that is a very scary situation. If a storm is like this and lowering down to the ground, well, that's the precursor for the tornado, because if that cloud can touch the ground, well, so can its rotating up and down draft. So very, very scary and ominous skies that Mark is driving towards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think rotation's off to my right.
Okay. So, Mark, you want to jump in here? We've got your mic up.
Oh, yes, Kim, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I've got a couple other team chasers right now. Let me just turn that radio down. Watching the rotation just to the right side of the road. It's a little bit hard to see at the moment, and I want to be careful I don't drive underneath it, but we're just to the north of Singhamton, and that's almost due south of us right now. Storm motion seems to be sort of off to the east, maybe southeast at this point, which is somewhat we expected. You can see, I'm going to move the camera around so you can see a little bit better. But right there, right in front of me, you can see what looks to be, and I'm just going to pull over so I can get a good idea, looks to be potentially a funnel cloud right in front of me. I'm going to zoom the camera in a little bit, just a bit. You can kind of see that. A little hard to tell at this point. Sort of got a whole bunch of different areas that are sort of rotating around me. So the one thing that I'm noticing on this, it's not, extremely organized where, there's one spot where I can absolutely say that's where the tornado is going to be. Definitely a couple of different areas that it's sort of pulling up. But I'm taking a very close look. I'm just to the north of Singhamton. And yeah, the storm seems to be headed down towards, just past Singhamton, likely towards Duntroon or Creemore. Creemore is the other spot that I'm watching very closely.
Yeah, all these areas were pointed out on the warning that Environment and Climate Change Canada sent out. So that's good news. They're pinpointing exactly the communities that could be impacted by this storm. And again, tornado warnings are in place. That's where our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, is. This is cottage country. This is a popular spot for people to go on the weekend, certainly on a long weekend of the summer. Here's a look at the warnings in general. In that pink, that is the tornado warning. In that orangey brown, that's a tornado watch. So just getting a jump on the potential for more development. That's why you would be under a tornado watch. It is not a reason to panic, but it is a reason to get prepared. Tornado warning, that means you need to be indoors. And Rachel, you've got a really good shot right now of the radar and the storm that is warned.
Yep, that's where our supercell is. Like we mentioned, it's around
I'm gonna head down towards Singleton.
areas of cottage country along the shores of Georgian Bay, north of Alliston, north of Highway 10, making its way towards the southeast. So areas like Creemore going to be in the path of this storm. This is really the only cell across southern Ontario. So if you pull up your radar, you will more than likely guess where the supercell is. Right there. That is rotating. It is tornado warned. I am watching the rotation. It is getting a little bit more disorganized, so that is good news in terms of the tornadic threat. It does look like some of the other cells are popping up along the lake breeze boundary that we highlighted as well, so we could see maybe some other areas flaring up towards the west of this cell, so areas once again along the shores of Georgian Bay where that lake breeze boundary is set up. If we want to see where the tornado warning is in Alberta, we'll jump over a couple provinces and I will just change my radar to the radar in Edmonton so you can see that here. This is west of the QE2, just outside of Drayton Valley. This is also heading towards the southeast. This is the supercell that is tornado warned at the moment as well. So just giving all of our live streamers a picture of the two areas that we're looking at, one in Alberta and one across southern Ontario.
Okay, and we have some Collingwood video to show you what was happening there as the storm moves in. Aaron, thank you for this. You can see the downpours. Looks like a little bit of hail on this storm as well. And it's not going to take a lot for us to see ponding on the roads with this. Collingwood just getting inundated. This is on the storm's path. Collingwood under a tornado warning. But this is just looking at some of that rain coming down. Aaron, thank you for this. And again, we want you to be safe when it comes to storms like this. We love when people send their videos and photos, but we don't want anybody to do anything dangerous, certainly. And if you're under a tornado warning, you do not want to be out there with a camera. And as I've mentioned, our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, knows what he's doing. He's a professional storm chaser, and he knows how to follow these storms. Here's a look at the Alberta ones. Again, Brazeau County near Drayton Valley and Breton, the county of Wetaskiwin near Alder Flats and Winfield. Those are the areas under the tornado warning, currently at least in Alberta.
That's not the only cell that is worrying me across Alberta. That one to the north that you kind of saw in that warning there is also looking quite strong and looking like a supercell. So really all along the foothills of Alberta could possibly be seeing these supercells. And like we mentioned, supercells are categorized by strong up and down drafts and also rotating storms. So if they get a chance, they could lower down to the surface and produce possibly tornadoes. So although we have one that is tornado warned. One towards the north in Alberta is also experiencing some rotation and looking quite strong as well. So we're going to track these really across Canada now because of the imminent threat and danger. If you are in a tornado warning, you want to get inside, get into a basement. Don't be out by the windows trying to get a shot of this. We're going to continue to see areas that may be impacted towards Drayton Valley, but heading towards Buck Lake in Alberta. That is once again west of the QE2. Looking at the weather alerts across southern Ontario now, we still have severe thunderstorm warnings in effect for areas like Timmins up through Kapuskasing, but it is in and around the Georgian Bay shores. That's where our tornado watches and warnings are in place because of that lake breeze.
Okay, it's just starting. I think, we had anticipated this kind of weather. Tornado warnings possibility was there with the risk that we had with this hot and humid weather. We do have a system that's coming, but this has nothing to do with that. This is lake breeze. So these are the initial storms. This could be a weekend of severe weather for some, even tornado warning. So keep that in mind. Make sure if you're traveling, because it is a long weekend and people go to these more remote areas and to their cottages, that you do have your phone handy with the Weather Network app, preferably, but as long as you can get your alerts and you know what's happening, because I know a lot of people want to shut off, Rachel, for the weekend and say, okay, goodbye to my phone. But in this kind of air mass, in this kind of scenario, that's not what you want to do, because this could happen over and over again this weekend.
Yeah, it's that safety aspect. We all want to unplug, and we deserve to unplug now and again, but just making sure that your phone is on loud. You can mute specific apps, so you can mute your messages. I have my emails muted if I am ever off, but keep your phone on loud, because then you'll hear it ring if you are in one of these tornado warnings, not just for today, but also there may be a threat headed east into tomorrow. So just a little trick of the trade. If you know anybody in these regions, maybe give them a call so that they are aware and they are remaining safe. Once again, in the lowest level of the home, or an interior home is preferred. And areas that across southern Ontario that may be impacted by this include Creemore, Duntroon, Sighampton, as well as Glencairn. It is moving towards the southeast, so you have that time now to prepare, but you should be indoors, because in a few moments this system is going to be making its way across your region.
Yeah, and if you're in that tornado watch, it means the potential is there for tornadoes to develop. So that's what we want you to do. We want you to prepare now for the possibility of tornado development. If you're in the warning, of course, that means that you need to be in a safe spot currently. Now, this is quite a large area that is under the tornado warning, but as Rachel was pointing out, another little cell popped up behind the main player. So this is the storm that is tornado warned, that is pushing to the south and east, but behind it, another storm has popped up on the lake breeze. So just so you know that these storms can come, what people say, out of nowhere, but we know they are coming, that we know the potential is there. So even though back towards Owen Sound, you may be wondering, well, why am I under a tornado warning? One of the reasons why is that these warnings are issued for regions or for counties. And when the entire county is warned, which is how it happens, your particular town or village may not be impacted directly, but somewhere within your region would be. So that's why it happens like this. But again, we certainly do have a storm that we have seen rotating. We've seen it on video. We have seen it on radar. And this is a potentially dangerous scenario, even life-threatening potentially. And here is the watch area. So because that storm is traveling in the southeasterly direction, anywhere north or south of Barrie could be impacted. And again, Rachel, this is a place where people head out onto the lake. They love to do that kind of thing. They go golfing up here in this part of Ontario. It's a real playground in the summertime, and it's a downer that this is going on right now, but right now we're here to keep people safe. And I don't think anyone could be particularly surprised on a kind of a dark, gloomy day like this one. If people were out in the middle of the lake and it was blue skies, that would be one thing, but it's just not that kind of a day.
No, it's really not, and it's not really the setup that is going to produce widespread risk. It's very isolated, so even more tricky when we're looking at the forecast. I'm going to be very interested to see how that cell in behind it does interact with this supercell. But talking about supercells, the supercell in southern Ontario that is tornado warned is just one of many supercells that are ongoing across Canada. I want to give a little bit of love to Alberta because Alberta is also experiencing tornado warnings. This is our risk map for your Friday afternoon and evening. Things are just starting to get going. You can see the red on the map in and around Edmonton. That's where we have strong dynamics for some stronger storms. We'll continue to see those flare up along the foothills of Alberta, making their way towards the east or southeast throughout Friday. So that is going to be a big concern if they do track over the QE2 around your 8 p.m. hour. But currently we do have a tornado warning in place through Alberta. You can see once again a supercell just outside of Drayton Valley, but there are a slew of supercells that are popping up along the foothills of Alberta. South of Calgary even has one. I don't want to pronounce this wrong, so you can message me on Twitter if I do this wrong, but Okotoks, thank you.
You're welcome.
That area, there's a supercell making its way towards you, and that could also be rotating as well. You can see a little bit of that hook signature. It doesn't look like it's as strong as the one that's outside of Drayton Valley, but once again, you want to stay weather aware across the foothills of Alberta and across southern Ontario, specifically around the Georgian Bay shores. This is a little snapshot of what's going on right now in Alberta. The foothills are flaring up. We once again expected there to be severe weather. It's occurring a little bit earlier, but those dynamics are quite favorable across Alberta because they not only have an abundance of thunderstorm energy, Kim, but they're also getting into some of those upper level wind dynamics. And you can see that surface low that's slowly developing across the province. That's going to be a feature into Saturday. Saturday, we could also be talking about tornadoes across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and also across Ontario and Quebec. So quite a busy, long weekend for Canadians, but also for us here at the Weather Network.
Yeah, no kidding. We do have some good news. I know I've been just the bearer of bad news this whole time, but we do have some endings to the tornado warning in Ontario. So Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and Northern Grey County are now out of the tornado warning, which is good news, obviously, but the tornado warning remains for Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale. So again, they're still saying locations impacted include Singhamton, Devil's Glen, Provincial Park, Duntroon, Glen Huron, Rob Roy, Dunedin, Websterville, and Smithdale. But again, areas that include Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and Northern Grey County are out of the tornado warning, which is good news. We do have additional tornado warnings now, though, in Alberta. So again, the foothills near Diamond Valley, near Okotoks and DeWinton, you were just showing us that, and near High River and Alderside. So the foothills county, including all of these areas now. Again, Diamond Valley, Okotoks and DeWinton, and then near High River and Alderside are all currently under the tornado warning.
Yeah, that's once again, we saw that on radar, that hooking feature, Okotoks. I'm glad that we pointed that out. But that one is of a concern. It's south of Calgary, and it looks like the sections of the QE2 will be impacted. So once again, this is around 6 p.m. Eastern time, but you're going to have to fast forward a couple hours because Mountain Time, I believe it's about 4 p.m. there. So folks are just gearing up to head home along the commute. So if you are heading around Okotoks, High River, this storm is tornado warned. Could be producing a tornado about to cross the QE2, moving towards the south and east, just similarly to our storms in southern Ontario, but completely different province here. So that storm is looking quite healthy, and that is a new development, that tornado warning across that region, and also seeing that storm continuing to be quite quite healthy just outside of Drayton Valley. It's farther away from the QE2, so we may see less impacts from this tornado warning, except if you were in some smaller communities west of the QE2. But I know that this highway is going to be quite busy, and this is not what you want to see crossing it. It could also be producing some large hail as well. I would not be surprised. That is also a classic Alberta setup. Supercells all across Canada we're tracking, and all of the big players are now tornado warned.
Okay, and this is a lot to do with topography in both provinces, in both Alberta and in Ontario. In Alberta, we've got the foothills, so we've got the mountains, and we get these storms that develop just along the mountains, and they pop up really quickly and then start to race eastward. And in Ontario, we have them popping up along the lakeshore because of the breeze, that clash of the cooler lake breeze with the hot, humid air mass. And now let's take a look at some of what that has produced. So Mark Robinson in near Collingwood, and this is the rotating storm that had the tornado warning on it. Some areas still in that warning, including Collingwood. Barrie and Hillsdale are under that tornado warning. But again, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and Northern Grey County, you were under that tornado warning. You are no longer in it, which is good news. So those areas now out of the tornado warning, but still a concern. And our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, on it. He was chasing this storm today, so he pulled over to the side of the road, got a really great shot of what that was looking like. And you know, we've been getting messages, Rachel, people are concerned about what they should do if they're in that tornado warning. Hopefully they're not in a car, number one, that they're in a safe spot. So in a building, that's where you need to be. You need to be on the bottom floor. Hopefully that's a basement. If you don't have a basement, you want to be in an interior room. You want to be away from windows in something like a closet or an interior bathroom, a structure like that. If you're very concerned, again, you can pull a blanket or pillows over your head, maybe a light mattress. Some people have done that as well. But these storms can be very dangerous very quickly. We don't want people to be caught unawares. And if you are in the tornado watch, it means that you're in a scenario where a tornado may develop. If you are in the warning, it is likely happening. It could be that someone has a storm hunter or storm chaser has spotted it on the ground and there is evidence of a tornado touching down, or in many cases it's because meteorologists are looking at a radar and can see the signature of rotation.
And Kim, as you were speaking, it looks like the tornado warnings have been dropped across southern Ontario, so that is good news. Like Mark was mentioning, the storm that was a supercell heading towards Creemore currently, it did get a little bit disorganized. So that means that it is diminishing its tornadic threat, however, likely still producing quite a bit of hail. And I'd be interested to see, we've seen it once before, if you joined us earlier on the live stream, if that energy gets transferred into that next cell that popped up just outside of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it does. Does not mean that these areas are in the clear. We're still dealing with quite a bit of a supercell environment through our 6 o'clock hour, continuing to make their way towards the south and east. So areas like Creemore are going to be impacted, and then we're going to keep a close watch on that next cell that's right in behind it. These areas are just outside of Highway 10. Here's what the hail was looking like. This is in through Collingwood. This is not something you really want to be driving in. You can see it's coupled with the heavy amounts of rain, and I believe it was about nickel-sized hail associated with these storms. But the tornadic threat, like we mentioned, has diminished, and that is why Environment Canada has lifted the tornado warnings, keeping a close watch on that second system that's just over Kimberley and areas like Maxwell. It does look like our environment might be fizzling out a little bit. I'll take a close look in it, but it's only ramping up in Alberta.
Okay, we've been live how long now? A couple hours? Just good. Not wearing our watches, it doesn't matter. So that's good news. Tornado warning has now come to an end, at least for those areas in Ontario. There are no tornado warnings. There is a tornado watch still in effect. Severe thunderstorm warnings still in effect. Looks like we just lost our tornado warning around Brazeau County, so in northern areas, and Wetaskiwin near Alder Flats and Winfield. So those are now out in Alberta. We've jumped across the country, but southern areas around the foothills are still in that tornado tornado warning. So near Diamond Valley, Okotoks and De Winton, and near High River and Aldersyde. These areas south of Calgary in the pink are in the tornado warning currently. These cells developing along the foothills of Alberta and then moving eastward. Very typical scenario for this time of year, and Alberta was expecting these kinds of storms. Now in Calgary, we had a lightning storm, downpours, heavy rain yesterday, and now again we're talking about a scenario where these big storms could develop once more. So there's our tornado warning in places, the only one currently in Canada that is in effect. And again, south of Calgary, Foothills County, near Diamond Valley, near Okotoks and De Winton, and near High River and Aldersyde. These are the areas specifically in that tornado warning right now. I know you have a look at the radar in both of these areas, Rachel. Again, these storms are developing in similar scenarios, but not quite the same. They don't have the smoke in Alberta right now, but it's warm.
Yeah, and Alberta is looking quite severe. That's why the red was on the map. We had higher confidence in seeing exactly what we're seeing in and around the Edmonton region and along the foothills. But I want to point out a couple of questions that came up on YouTube. We're talking about how is Barrie, how is Collingwood? Folks are driving in through Barrie. Are they going to be okay? Now, there's no imminent threat towards the 400. We are going to be seeing some heavier rainfall making its way in. The tornado watch is still in place, so you still want to be very weather aware, because as you've seen, a lot of our information is changing by the minute, so you want to keep all of your weather information handy. Likely going to be seeing some heavy rainfall, maybe some hail making its way towards the 400 in maybe 10-15 minutes, depending on how fast these are moving, though they are moving a little bit slowly. But like I mentioned, the tornado warnings have dropped in this region. No imminent threat, but still be weather aware. I do want to point out that our tornado watch did expand. Like I mentioned, we're keeping a close watch on how that second cell is going to play a role with our bigger supercell. If that energy gets transferred, it looks like it's hooking just a bit. So we're going to, again, be looking closely at the cell that's over Kimberley, Ontario. But just want to point out that this is going on in southern Ontario, very busy weekend, very populated areas. I want to jump over to Alberta because we continue to see tornado watches or tornado warnings in place. And this one that is south of Calgary, this is aimed towards a region that is home to 30,000 people. So just putting that in perspective for some of our viewers, heading right over a very busy highway as well. So very high impact tornadic threat underway for areas south of Calgary, the QE2 towards High River.
Yeah, the good news is some of it has shrunk, but there's areas still in it. So near Okotoks and De Winton, still in that tornado warning, and near High River and Aldersyde. But the warning has ended for the foothills near Diamond Valley. So one area has come to an end, a little closer to the foothills, as the storm passes over. So it's not like the storm has died per se, it's that the storm is moving, and that's what will happen, that the warnings will be issued, the storm will go through, and then the warnings will drop after it has done so. So that's why these areas are now currently in that tornado warning. I mean, with my map, it looks like such a small area, but as you're saying, this could be impacting thousands and thousands of people in this particular community. And again, storms can continue in Alberta for the next several hours.
Yeah, we're expecting, like, this is just the ramp up, the beginning of maybe what's to come, because we have a lot more thunderstorm energy to work with across Alberta. We've seen heat warnings in place. Temperatures are still much warmer than southern Ontario, and we're talking about more of a larger scale features that are going to continue to impact Alberta. That's helping us raise our confidence in seeing these supercells. We saw them even yesterday in in Calgary that got absolutely devastated with heavy amounts of rain. I mean, we want to see the rain in Alberta. It's a very critical time to get it. But when it comes all at once, it could be quite dangerous.
Yeah, and if we get hail with these storms, it's not good for farmers. They don't want hail. Yes, they'll take the rain, but yes, when it comes to hail, that can be devastating as well. And we know these storms can produce them. And we know that in a very short period of time, you can have a crop completely devastated as a result. Here again is our tornado warned area. And we're talking about the foothills near Okotoks and De Winton and High River and Aldersyde. And I'm going to throw it to you.
Here's the ingredients that we're talking about with Alberta. We can see that some of the oranges and reds are popping up when we're talking about our thunderstorm energy. Hopefully Kim can grab a little drink of water. These storms are along the foothills and they are tracking into an environment that is favorable for strong supercells, as you can see here, especially areas that are outside of Edmonton towards the west as we head into your, this is Friday around 7 p.m. I want to say. So those darker reds and oranges, that is showing us that we have an abundance of thunderstorm energy. That's something that we don't have across southern Ontario, though a few supercells were still able to really lift the lid on the smoke that was over top of us. But the smoke is limiting the severe threat across Ontario. Meanwhile, we don't have that in place across Alberta. So where those orange and red sections are, that's where we'll likely see more of that tornadic environment. This is what Alberta has that Ontario is missing. When I talk about large scale or synoptic features, it is this. Upper level winds, so we're talking about the jet stream pattern now. You can see throughout Friday we get a little bit of that upper level wind support, so that allows for stronger storms to develop. But have a look at what happens as we head into Saturday. Now, if you are a weather nerd or a meteorologist, you know that a digging trough in our jet stream is what can constitute some severe thunderstorm activities. This is the trough, and this is the area that is likely going to be seeing some favorable upper level dynamics to help support some stronger storms. So into Saturday, we'll likely see our risk be upgraded as well, including areas towards the east of Edmonton this time, where that low pressure system is going to develop. So throughout your Friday, we'll time out the precipitation. We're going to continue to see these supercells make their way off of the foothills, moving towards the east or southeast along the QE2, Highway 2, like we just mentioned. That will continue as we head into your 9 o'clock hour, 10 o'clock hour. The threat will continue to diminish. However, the threat does remain as we fast forward into your Saturday. That's where a surface low wants to develop over Alberta and Saskatchewan. And what that's going to do is bring in higher amounts of rotation or wind shear from the surface to the upper level. So any storms that begin to develop through Saturday afternoon and evening are going to be tapping into quite a robust environment. You can see exactly where east of Edmonton nosing its way into portions of central Saskatchewan as well. So you're going to want to continue to be aware, not only for Friday, but also into Saturday. But let's have a close look at what's going on for our supercells. Well, along the foothills of Alberta, once again, we are seeing the tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings begin to drop for areas that are outside of Edmonton. We're starting to see these storms lose a little bit of their energy as they make their way away from the Alberta foothills. However, we are continuing to see some of those remain quite strong, especially this one south of Calgary continues to experience some rotation. It's moving slowly along the QE2 at this moment, likely producing hail and could possibly be producing a tornado. It is tornado warned. This is not an area you want to be by your windows or out on the roadways. You want to pull over and get to the lowest level of your home that you have available or an interior room. I just got word we have a tornado warning now in southern Ontario, so I'm going to fly us all the way across the nation into southern Ontario, where we have a tornado warning that is in place. So we saw that tornado warning drop, but it has been reissued, and that includes Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale.
Yeah, I was just gonna, that's exactly what I was just gonna say. Yes, so Barrie, Collingwood, Hillsdale now back under that tornado warning, and we saw that storm kind of pop up behind the initial one, and that's the kind of scenario we're in right now. That's the kind of atmosphere we're in right now across southern Ontario. So even if you have a watch or a warning drop, it doesn't mean that another one won't be reissued. I thought maybe some of the energy might be sucked out of the atmosphere, but not just yet, Rachel.
No, not just yet. Sometimes these storms are so powerful that they can just continue going and fueling themselves almost. And like we mentioned, it's riding that trigger. So it's just getting enough kick to produce possibility of a tornado. So it looks like, I want to say, I haven't seen the new tornado warning pop up, but I'm looking at some of the rotation, and honestly, both of these cells could be rotating. We're starting to see a little bit of the hook in the second one, and I don't really think that that hook really left us in that first one. So this is probably the one that is tornado warned, and there now it pops in. So it is that same supercell that was tornado warned. It has been reissued, and areas like Creemore, you are going to be directly impacted by this. It is currently over Glen Huron, moving towards the southeast. Creemore, Glencairn, New Lowell. These are areas that are in the path of the storm. Still is showing some pretty robust rotation on radar that I'm looking at right now, Kim.
And and not to be outdone, and hopefully my voice lasts for a minute here. Yeah, that's where we're at now. North Bay is now under a tornado warning.
Okay.
So farther north, North Bay, Powassan, and Mattawa are all currently under tornado warnings. We're going to try to grab those for you as well. So areas, I'm going to see if they have anything specific about where this one is headed. I don't see anything right now, but again, tornado warnings if you're in North Bay, of course, a fairly large city in northern Ontario, Powassan and Mattawa. So that's completely separate from the storms that we're seeing around Barrie and Collingwood. I know you're trying to grab them there. There's North Bay. Again, I am heading to North Bay next week, as a matter of fact. But anyway, North Bay currently under a tornado warning. Areas to the south, Barrie, Orillia under that tornado, or Barrie, Collingwood under the tornado warning as well. If you're in Powassan, Mattawa, North Bay, you're going to want to take cover. You want to be inside. You want to be in a basement. What are you looking at, Rachel?
Oh, sorry. I was just, I was zooming into the North Bay cell, and I kind of said that out loud. I didn't really mean to, but I was like, oh, I wonder why it's tornado warned. And I saw the radar, and I went, that's why. There is a hook on this supercell that is in and around North Bay, just south of North Bay, I want to say. Yep. But it is along Highway 21. That is a very frequented highway. Like you mentioned, Kim, as you head up there, you're probably going to be taking that highway. And it does look like it is going to make a direct impact to areas north of Powassan, but including Powassan. So Powassan, Alderdale, and Chiswick. I hope I'm pronouncing those correctly. It does look like North Bay itself is spared. It is south of North Bay. There is that risk map, but it is this cell right here that is rotating along Highway 11. So Powassan is going to be the biggest town that is going to be impacted by that one.
Okay, and so we can see that North Bay has obviously seen a thunderstorm, just not this particular tornado warned storm that we're talking about in North Bay. I'm going to clear my throat again and try some more. Areas to the south continue to be under a tornado warning. We've been watching those two juicy storms move through, one following the other. We had tornado warnings. They came up and then they were dropped, and then they were reissued again for Barrie and Collingwood area. Of course, a very popular spot in Ontario for people to get away on a long weekend, the Canada Day weekend. People have cottages here. People obviously live here as well, so they live here all year long, but it is a place that has a much bigger population come the summertime, and that's why there is such a concern. And people who are driving there too are concerned, because if their phones are going off, if they have an alert for their cottage, say, they know that they're potentially driving into a dangerous scenario. Again, if you find yourself in a tornado warning, please get indoors. Please get into the lowest room in the house. If that's a basement, fantastic. Obviously, a lot of homes or cottages will not have a basement necessarily, but get into an interior room, away from windows, for example. And again, okay, so this is the same thing. North Bay, Powassan, Mattawa, nickel to ping pong ball sized hail. Locations impacted. Now this is new, I believe, because I know that they'll get the warning out and then they'll try to get all those details of the towns that could be impacted. So we're going to go back up north here. Powassan, Booth, Alderdale, Grahamvale, Mink Lake, Wazee Lake, and Lake Nosponsing, if I'm saying that right. Nosponsing. Okay. So, or no sponsing. All of these areas are now in the path, potentially, of this tornado. Powassan, Booth, Alderdale, Grahamvale, Mink Lake, Wazee Lake, and Lake Nosponsing are all on, at least named in the warning. It is not confirmed tornado. That's the thing too, we have to keep in mind that often we see these storms on radar. It looks like it could be a tornado. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Sometimes that is determined well after the fact. And again, the tornado warning continues for Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale. Locations, now I'm going to make you fly south again. Thank you, Rachel. Locations impacted include Creemore, Cashtown Corners, and New Lowell. So those are all on the warning right now. They say it'll be updated or ended by 7:34 p.m., but this is a warning that has come up, been dropped, and then reissued as a second storm follows the first.
And Kim, I also want to point out, like this same storm is the one that is tornado warned, but you can see a very similar signature in that second one that developed just behind it. It still has that same kind of hook. Let me pause it here so we're not getting dizzy. It still has that same sort of hooking feature on the storm itself. It is looking quite beefy and strong indeed, producing lots more lightning. I would not be surprised if we get a tornado warning on this storm here. Areas that could be impacted by that secondary storm include Maxwell. Again, this is tracking south of Singhampton. So many of the areas that are similar that were impacted by that first tornado warning may be impacted once again by that secondary one that's following along that lake breeze front. So not only the tornado warned cell that I'm worried about, that is going to be impacting areas like Creemore, Glencairn, possibly Angus, but it is currently over Glen Huron. That's the one that is tornado warned, but like I mentioned, very similar setup, very similar look to that secondary storm. So I wouldn't be surprised if that tornado warning did expand across southern Ontario. I'm just going to jump over to Alberta too to see how those storms have developed, because we've had quite a development across Ontario. We still have a tornado warning in effect for the Okotoks region. Looks like almost a direct impact, unfortunately, for them. Still lingering over the QE2. Looks like on radar, lots of hail associated with this storm. So definitely not a good driving weather across the QE2. Hopefully it'll make its way out and begin to diminish its strength.
Yeah, this is going to be likely one of many big storms that develop in Alberta. Again, the areas include the foothills county near Okotoks and De Winton, and near High River and Alderside. So yes, this is one cell, but obviously we have a few cells popping up all along the foothills of Alberta, all along the mountains. This is very typical when we get this kind of topography this time of year. We saw all the elements in place and we knew that these storms were going to develop. Again, if you're in a tornado warning, please get somewhere safe. I know we are used to seeing some big storms in Alberta, typical for this time of year. We had a massive storm in Calgary yesterday. Saw all kinds of video online showing the lightning, the non-stop lightning, and then the heavy downpours as well with that storm. I know some people thought maybe they had a microburst because it was just so intense, and that's what you can get. You can get these big intense storms in Alberta this time of year. This being one of them that formed off the foothills and then pushed east. There's Okotoks right now, and again, High River to the south. There's Calgary, so it's south of Calgary this time around, which is good news to see, but certainly these areas, 30,000 people population. So this is going to impact a lot of people. It's not in the middle of nowhere. And when it comes to issuing tornado warnings, it's done two ways. One is that a storm spotter, somebody who's trained to do that, sees it on the ground. Sometimes it's someone like an RCMP officer will see it, and then they will let Environment and Climate Change Canada know. And the other way is by looking at radar, and you can see signatures in the radar that show that something is rotating. In Alberta, we have this storm. In Ontario, there are two areas of concern. We have tornado warnings in the north and tornado warnings in the south. For you in North Bay and Powassan, tornado warnings there. North Bay looks like it's going to miss this one, but Powassan not so much. So two areas, both very popular this time of year as we get into a long weekend. Tornado warnings around North Bay, and then tornado warnings around Barrie, Collingwood, Orillia, these areas. Two storms back to back. The first one tornado warned, but the second one, as you've been saying, Rachel, it looks a little ominous.
It does. It looks very similar to the one that is in front of it across southern Ontario. I'm also seeing rotation on that storm. Once again, it popped up just like that right along the lake breeze front, maybe feeding off of some of that energy. And I want to point out Powassan's storm because I'm looking at it on a high resolution monitor that you can't quite see. But what I'm looking at is a textbook Hook Echo supercell. I mean, this is something that I would say confidently is producing a tornado, although I'm not on the ground in order to verify that. But it looks like a very dangerous situation for Powassan. If you know anybody that is traveling along Highway 11, give them a call, make sure that they're okay, because like I said, the radar is looking quite dangerously scary for that region. For southern Ontario, I'm still seeing that rotation. It's not as tight as what is going on in northern Ontario, North Bay, but it is still present and could still be producing a tornado, not just on the tornado warned storm, the one that is making its way towards Creemore any moment now, but also the one in behind that's targeting very similar regions that saw the first round, so Singhampton and areas surrounding that region. Both of these looking quite healthy.
In Alberta, we have another tornado warned area. It's in the same region as the other two along the foothills, but now it includes near Blackie. So near Blackie, Okotoks and De Winton, and near High River and Alderside, all under this tornado warning. Communities in the path include Alderside and Gladys. So the storm is moving east at about 30 kilometers per hour, and now the newest area to be added is near Blackie. So that is now part of the tornado warning. The tornado warning does now continue. I'm going to jump back over to Ontario. North Bay, Powassan, and Mattawa, you were talking about that. And the the area is northeast of Nipissing, moving east at 30 kilometers per hour. Areas that could be impacted include Booth, Alderdale, Grahamvale, Mink Lake, Wassy Lake, Lake Nosbonsing, I always trip on that one, Bonfield, Barse Lake, Froggy Lake, La Chapelle Lake, and Sheedy Lake. These are all areas that could be impacted by this very strong storm this hour.
Yeah, and it's just terrible timing with the long weekend, Kim. So many people are out and about, could be even traveling up to North Bay, cottaging. It's just a very poor situation to be in, poor timing, especially for folks along the QE2, along in southern Ontario, along Highway 26, and then also along Highway 11 in through Powassan. Those are three areas we're keeping a very close watch on. I'm just going to look at some of Environment Canada's weather alerts to see how big the hail is also going to be with some of these storms, because I think it could be quite damaging.
And there are some new areas to this as well. Please forgive me for clearing my throat and whatnot, but that's how we go when we're live for a couple hours. Okay, so Hanover, Dundalk, Southern Grey County are now under the tornado warning, as well as Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County. They are back in the tornado warning. So Hanover, Dundalk, Southern Grey County, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County. So they're now all under the tornado warning. They were under a severe thunderstorm warning. They're back in the tornado warning, and still Collingwood and Barrie are under that warning as well. So that is that second storm that you've been watching. So the one behind the first, and obviously both of them very dangerous storms.
Yep, that's what the one I mentioned that was also looking very similar and also experiencing rotation. I would say the rotation on that second storm was looking more dominant. It looks like the exact same thing happened. It's taking the energy from the first storm and is strengthening. So that means we're still going to be weather aware in through Creemore, but that storm that is the one following in behind, look how big it got. This is just in 15 minutes. That one, I see some pretty good rotation on it, and some areas that need to be seeking shelter. Maxwell, lots of rotation on radar. Feversham, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Singhampton, stay indoors, stay off the roadways. Again, a supercell that is developing, and guess what, Kim? I'm starting to see let alone another cell beginning to emerge. This lake breeze boundary is going to be relentless throughout this evening. Slow moving storms could also produce some pretty large amounts of rainfall. Hail as well is going to be quite damaging, but this cell is looking quite beefy indeed for folks in through southern Ontario. I'll point out that hook once again. Let me get my drawing tool here. That hook once again, this is that tornado area moving towards the southeast.
Yeah, it's great to point that out, because then people can see too, if they're looking at a radar, they can see, okay, what am I looking for on this? What are the signatures for a tornado or rotation on a storm? Obviously, we are in an atmosphere that's ripe for these kinds of storms in Ontario. We expected these to happen. There's a look a little farther away, two storms, one following the other, pretty juicy, both of them, tornado warnings as a result of their formation. And again, areas to the north around North Bay and Powassan, both of these regions seeing tornado warnings as well. We were concerned about air quality through much of the day. We're talking about the fact that smoke could have hindered the growth of these storms. It did not happen. They continued to grow along that lake breeze boundary. I mean, who knows what could have happened if there was no smoke. It may be even worse than the scenario that we're under now. And a few areas, again, in the foothills of Alberta, also under tornado warnings this hour. So again, Okotoks, Blackie is under this tornado warning too. This storm moving at about 30 kilometers per hour towards the east. If you find yourself in a tornado warning, please make sure you're staying inside. You're not going to the window to look at these storms. You're staying away from windows, because that's a dangerous place to be. You don't want to be opening windows, certainly. Flying debris can be a real problem. That's how people get hurt. So get into a low room, the lowest one you've got. Get into a room that preferably doesn't have a lot of windows, or small windows at the very least. Closets are always a good place to be as well. And then knowing where these storms are, sometimes you can hear for them. They're just that loud. But again, whether you're in a tornado warning or not, maybe you're just in a thunderstorm or a severe thunderstorm, lightning is always deadly, or can be deadly, and just with listening to thunder, that's a reason to get indoors. Tornado warning again, Hanover, Dundalk, Southern Grey County, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and Northern Grey County. These are the areas currently under that tornado warning, at least to the west and again to the east. It doesn't look like, I don't think that they have ended Barrie Collingwood. Looks like it's still in there, but this most recent one is talking about locations impacted, including Feversham, Maxwell, McIntyre, Badgeros, and Maple Valley. I'm sure that I am butchering some of these names. Please forgive me. Feversham, Maxwell, McIntyre, Badgeros, and Maple Valley. All of these areas could be impacted by a potential tornado. The storm is about 5 kilometers southwest of Feversham, moving east at 25 kilometers per hour. Here's another update. Okay, so the tornado warning for North Bay, Powassan, and Mattawa. Again, they're talking about nickel to ping pong ball size hail. I think they've added some more areas now to the warning. Not to the warning specifically, but just calling out the communities that may be impacted. And they include, and we're going to start again, Booth, Corbeil, Dual Lake, Alderdale, Grahamvale, Long Lake, Mink Lake, Wassy Lake, Lake Nosbonsing, Lauren Lake, Balsam Creek, Walden Lake, Songus, Whitethroat Lake, Turtle Lake, Moosegrass Lake, Big Fish Lake, Brummel Lake, and Tilliard Lake and Bonfield. So yeah, this is an area full of lakes that people love to go and fish on and have a cottage on, and this is a potentially dangerous situation. So those are all the tiny little communities that may be impacted by these very big and juicy storms.
Yeah, and big and juicy storms, that's really the theme, not only in North Bay, Southern Ontario, but also Alberta. We continue to track the slew of severe thunderstorms and also tornado warnings. I just have here like a snapshot of what's going on across Canada, because it is very busy indeed, from Alberta to Northern Ontario and Southern Ontario. I'm going to double check this one in Southern Ontario, because I think this one could get quite dangerous indeed. I saw how that played out. We had a robust storm over Collingwood. It fueled the tornado warned storm that is leading the way right here. And now it looks like that fuel is jumping into this cell that's over Maxwell. And I'm looking on radar, and it is strengthening. This second storm is definitely strengthening and will be quite impactful for, once again, Singhampton. The areas that were already impacted by that first storm, but it is traveling a little bit more towards the south. So areas like, let me zoom out here, areas like Honeywood, south of Creemore, south of Singhampton. I'm looking at the radar here, and it is showing robust rotation and a strong thunderstorm, a strong supercell. So I'm going to draw out what a supercell looks like, and it looks something like this. Okay, so wherever you see a radar signature like that, that is what constitutes as a supercell. What is it? Well, it's a dangerous thunderstorm that has a rotating updraft. It's driven by wind shear, or that change of wind direction and height, and it can produce large hail and tornadoes. That's exactly what we're seeing. And across Southern Ontario, the ones up through North Bay, may also in fact be fueled by a little bit of a boundary or a lake breeze off of the lake there, because our main driver, that low pressure system over the Great Lakes, it's still taking its time. It's taking its sweet time getting across Southern Ontario. So I thought that the North Bay storms were maybe driven by that front, but it looks like maybe similarly to Southern Ontario, it's driven by a bit of a lake breeze, because the lakes across Ontario are big enough to influence our weather. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So this lake breeze is continuing to fuel tornado-warned storms across Southern Ontario, possibly also up through North Bay. Areas across the on the shores of Lake, or Georgian Bay rather, are going to be the ones to watch, with very tight rotation right over Maxwell, traveling towards the south and east. Once again, this storm is quite impressive over Powassan. I can't show you the high resolution radar, unfortunately, but take my word for it. It is looking like it has quite a bit of a hook. And then once again, over Alberta, we still have, I believe, some tornado warnings in place, Kim. I'll jump over there just to make sure, but yeah, that Okotoks storm is still producing that rotation here.
Yeah, and we have a little bit of video coming out from Creemore, one of the areas that we were talking about being impacted by these storms in Ontario. So Creemore showing, I guess this is from Mark Robinson, I assume so, are Storm Hunter has been on these storms, watching as they were developing, making his way towards the area that he thought would be impacted. And what's interesting here is you can see that storm, but there's no precipitation when he's looking at it. He's far enough away at this point in time, but this is one of the areas that has been in the path of these storms, not just once, but twice. And I want to show you the best locations in your home where you should be if you are under a tornado warning. So this is a nice little illustration. You don't want to be up in the attic or the top floor. You want to move to an interior room in the basement. That is the best possible place to be. The top floors do not protect you in a scenario like a tornado. When we talk about getting to top floors, we're talking about, say, a hurricane, for example. That's when you want to get up high because you could have storm surge and flooding, and that could be dangerous. But in this scenario, it's different. You want to be in the most stable part of your home, preferably the basement, an interior room, away from windows, because it is flying debris that could be what causes the most injuries in that kind of scenario. So we have tornado warnings again: Hanover, Dundalk, Southern Grey County, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County, and then in Ontario as well around North Bay, Powassan, and Mattawa. So all of these areas under a tornado warning. This is the area to the north, which has spread a little bit. And again, this is a big area where a lot of people may be camping or fishing or have a cottage. Not a huge population, but big enough. North Bay looks like the biggest storm for you is to your south, which is good news. But again, areas around Powassan, not so great. And all these little lakes in the region are in the path of this particular storm. So like Lauren Lake and Wassy Lake, Songhees, Whitethrow Lake, Turtle Lake. I was mentioning all of these tiny little communities, but again, being impacted by these storms. And a lot of these storms are formed because the lakes are cool. So you get a breeze off of these cooler lakes, and then it hits an air mass that is hot and sticky. And it's this clash of air masses, the cool and the hot, that then can produce not only severe thunderstorms, but potentially tornadoes. So we have that happening in both the north and the south. And it's going to be a weekend where we're looking at severe weather through much of the weekend, because we have a few more triggers other than just the lake breeze. Here's our tornado watch area. It's a huge area now all around Georgian Bay. And the watch is just saying, okay, heads up, there could be the potential development of a tornado. And of course, within the watch area is where we have been seeing tornado warnings, Rachel.
I'm looking at really every severe thunderstorm warning that there is, and really any of them could be rotating or producing something. So it's quite dangerous, because we're not only talking about southern Ontario and northern Ontario, but we're also talking about areas across Alberta and also Saskatchewan that are dealing with very robust storms. But that one you have in behind you, that's north of Powassan, Kim, we actually have
Dan, can you bring that up?
We actually have seen some unconfirmed reports that there may have been a tornado that has made its way through the area. So hopefully thinking all good things for the Powassan region, but there are unconfirmed reports that there was a tornado on the ground near Powassan.
Okay.
We're also starting to see some lowering as well in through Creemore, like you just showed, Kim. That is as we expected with that first cell. When I say first, I mean this one's going to be number 2, and there's also a number 3 that's beginning to develop over here. So still very active across southern Ontario. It is once again a lake breeze boundary that's causing all of this trouble. Very tight rotation still to come for the cell that's been over Maxwell. So areas towards the south and east are going to want to gear up for changing weather alerts if they can hold on to their strength across southern Ontario. That's the biggest question mark. But over in Alberta, that's where we have the more favorable dynamics. And also just taking a look at Saskatchewan as well across the south, very robust storms as well, a little bit less in terms of that rotation possibility, but still not zero nonetheless. All the Environment Canada severe thunderstorm warnings also issued across Saskatchewan mention the threat for also a tornado, but it is Alberta that's seeing more of that supercell characteristic. After the storm passed Okotoks and the QE2, it's losing a bit of steam, but it is still tornado warned. We also have more supercells that are tracking north of Calgary, north of Airdrie, as well as that storm that was outside of Drayton Valley, still looking quite strong, and once again is feeding a secondary storm along the foothills. So you're really going to want to be weather aware along Alberta's foothills today. Have a plan to get inside. Also areas across Saskatchewan, these are very strong storms yet again. We could see up anywhere from loony to ping pong size hail. And then this is our snapshot of southern Ontario. Like you mentioned, Kim, it's not the low pressure system and the cold front that's spawning these storms. It's more local scale features. So really hoping for the best. However, we are seeing that rotation on radar for the North Bay cell through Powassan, this one here, and also both of these storms that are making their way towards the east in southern Ontario.
Warned storms in this country right now, to the north, to the south in Ontario, and then the one in Alberta as well. And certainly not to be outdone, Saskatchewan also dealing with severe weather there. So not tornado warned, but thunderstorms certainly, and sometimes severe thunderstorms are exactly they can bring just as much damage without being a rotating storm. We have been hearing reports that a tornado did touch down in Powassan, Ontario, and hopefully everything is okay. Not a lot of damage done. We're not hearing much more than that. If a tornado does touch down, if there is damage, then the Northern Tornado Project, they will get out there and they will look at the damage and they will determine, first of all, whether or not a tornado did touch down, and secondly, what its strength was. And they determine the strength, the wind strength, by what kind of damage is done. So did siding come off the side of a house, or shingles lost, or trees down, that kind of thing. And so they'll determine, based on the damage, what the strength of the tornado was. They'll also tell whether or not a tornado touched down at all based on how the debris is scattered. So if it is scattered in a circle, that kind of thing, then they can tell that rather than straight line winds, it was a tornado. Somebody who knows all about this is our storm hunter, Mark Robinson. Mark, maybe you can talk for a while and give Rachel and I a little break with our voices. Tell us a little bit what you've been seeing and what you've been encountering on your storm chase.
Looks like they're still setting Mark up.
Okay. I tried, Rachel. I was so ready to go with him. But yes, we have tornado warnings in this area across southern areas of Georgian Bay. Again, a couple of storms back to back rolling an area that is very popular this time of year. We are headed into a long weekend. It's Friday. We've got Canada Day tomorrow. And again, this is a place where people go and have a cottage or maybe a tent. They're going to a provincial park, that kind of thing. So it's very, very popular, and this is bad timing. People are in their cars. They're driving northward, and hopefully they are weather aware and know that something is happening. I can hear Mark doing his mic check, which is great, because that means that he can tell us a little bit more about the storms that he's been seeing in this area. Just wanted to mention again, okay, so no real change. North Bay, Powassan, Mattawa, all still under that tornado warning, and it is located near Songus, moving northeast at 25 kilometers per hour. So that's the one a little farther to the north. Do we have Mark? Okay, we've got you, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yep, take it away.
Oh, you know what? Welcome to live TV. Kim, you're looking directly at the area of rotation. There's a tornado warning on this, but I'm seeing that's sort of the wall cloud right in front of me. I'm just near the town of Badgeros, just to the west of Creemore. These storms have just been cranked up all day long. This area seems to be just kicking them off for strong rotation. I've been through some big hail for Ontario, at least quarter-sized, which is a little unusual for this area. And if you're looking at it right now, you're looking straight north towards the potential where the tornado might be. So I am, as I said, I'm just to the east, or excuse me, west of Creemore. It's a farm area, so I can actually see a little bit. And I'll tell you, Kim, that lowered area there is definitely suspicious, just over top of the trees. I'm gonna want to move down the road a little bit. So you might lose me just for a second, just because I want to get a better look at that. So you're just going to lose the shot for just a second. But definitely the biggest danger in these storms is not the tornado, it's the lightning. Lightning is always the #1 danger in this, and I can tell you, some of the bolts that have hit close to me have been absolutely terrifying, very, very scary how fast they're hitting. So, and that often tells you how strong these storms are. If you've got really fast, what we call positive bolts, those are the ones that snap down and hit very fast, and they can be quite frightening. And of course, which is good because they can be quite deadly. So I'm going to drive up a little bit. I don't want to get too much closer because you're looking directly into the area of rotation now. I'm going to get a little closer. It's not moving very fast, so I can get pretty close. If I have to back up, I've got a very, very good spot to just turn around and go south. But I'm just going to pull up underneath this right here. So if we were to see a tornado on this, it would likely be right in front of us, right in front of me right now. I'm not going to get much closer than this, but that is sort of looking directly into the area of rotation. Kim, you're going to have a better idea of the radar right now. I finally pulled over so I can sort of do a quick text and take a look at and what we're seeing, and to see if these storms are really producing more and more rotation. Taking a quick look at the radar now, it doesn't look like it. It does look like these storms have lost some of their rotation in it. So it's one of those storms that can look really scary and but not quite as organized as it was earlier.
Okay, well, that's good news. I hope you're in a safe spot. We have a great shot of the sky. Thank you. And then we are also looking at the radar at the same time. But that's what these storms look like, at least this particular storm. We've got a few on the go. It's not the only tornado-warned storm in Ontario. Never mind the country. We've got 3 in the country right now, but this is the one near Creemore, Ontario. Our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, looking directly at it. Now, you're in a safe spot, Mark. How far away from it do you think you are?
I'm probably maybe a kilometer, maybe closer. But again, it doesn't have that really, really super strong rotation that we saw earlier. So I'm not as concerned about this. So my biggest concern with this one at this point is just the lightning. So this one was pretty electrified. I haven't seen too many bolts in the last few minutes, so it's probably it may be on its way out. So yeah, we could have one off to our west. I'm going to continue to follow these, because these storms have just been continuously producing stuff. But it can only last so long before it's done.
Well, good. I mean, I want these to be weakening. They've been some pretty powerful storms so far. We've seen a few of them. It looks like in northern Ontario, in Powassan, it looks like one touchdown. So that's, we're going to obviously have to investigate that. Orillia, Lagoon City, Midland, Coldwater, and Orr Lake in the tornado warning or out? Okay, dropped. So the Barrie tornado warning has dropped, so that's good news. So at least one of the areas is out. And as you were saying, Mark, I mean, if these are losing some steam, losing some rotation, they may continue to be dangerous thunderstorms, but the threat of rotation has eased, and it's exactly what we want to see. So tornado warnings coming to an end in some of these areas. It continues in North Bay to Miskamang area, Mattawa, Powassan, those areas still under that tornado warning. Now you are seeing the rain, which you weren't seeing earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to stay out of the rain so I can keep a good eye on stuff. But that wall cloud, coming right towards me, but I'm not seeing that tight rotation that I did earlier that really sort of speaks to the more dangerous part of the storm. I may pull back south a little bit to get a better look at it. but I'm not anticipating that this is going to suddenly drop a tornado, out of nowhere.
No, well, yeah.
At this point, just a bit of rain.
And they have dropped the tornado warning for the entire area, so that's good news. There is a tornado watch that remains in place, and certainly a severe thunderstorm warning for that area as well, but the tornado warning itself has come to an end. We still have a tornado warning farther north, and severe thunderstorm warnings and watches, but only one small tornado warning now in Ontario, which is good news. Doesn't mean that something else won't develop as the evening wears on, but the storms that you have been chasing at least are no longer tornado warned, and you called it, Mark. You saw it. You saw that there wasn't any kind of rotation happening on this storm, but boy, it's a big, dark, scary cloud, if nothing else.
Yeah, I like to call these SLCs, scary looking clouds. I make light of it, but it's one of those things you still have to take seriously, because the biggest issue, with all storms is lightning. And as I said, I had at least one bolt that hit right beside my car so much that I jumped in my seatbelt. It scared the pants off me. It was that close to the car. So yeah, those are the ones you have to be a little bit wary of. The tornadoes, probably not going to be that much of a problem with these, but I guess, again, that lightning, always an issue.
Yeah, and lightning can happen a long way away from the storm itself. So people may be caught unaware because they're thinking, well, I'm nowhere near the storm. How did this lightning bolt come out here? Or the storm passes. And we're always encouraging people to stay indoors until about 30 minutes after a storm has passed, because lightning can happen anytime in the atmosphere after the storm has gone. And the storm doesn't even have to be warned to produce lightning. And it's a really great reminder, Mark, that this could be dangerous just because of the lightning. We still have the tornado warning for North Bay, Powassan, and Mattawa. I'm trying to see where it is right now. Okay, so it is located near Songus, moving northeast at 25 kilometers per hour. So not a lot of change on that. It's likely producing a tornado located near Alderdale. Okay, moving east at 25 kilometers per hour. So I guess there's a couple of storms now that we're watching in northeastern Ontario. The tornado warning continues to be in place there. Thankfully, now the tornado warning where Mark has been farther south around Barrie and Collingwood has now come to an end. The watches and warnings continue when it comes to severe thunderstorms. Tornado watch still in place there, but this is the area of concern now in northern Ontario, where we do have a tornado warning in place. So I'm going to throw it now to Rachel Modestino, who's been looking at all of these storms. What a day. It's a Friday. It's the long weekend. Mother Nature doesn't care, Rachel. She doesn't care that that Canadians want to take a little bit of a break from all the action, and that's when she's really getting ramped up.
Yeah, this was supposed to be my vacation day, so my day off, and here I am. There's nowhere better I would actually rather be.
What a trooper. Thank you.
But of course, still going to be very busy across southern Ontario, southern Quebec, or southern Saskatchewan rather, and the foothills of Alberta. Just to paint a picture, we can go over everything that we've already covered, but the tornado warnings have dropped in southern Ontario. Still want to be weather aware. We still have a tornado watch for folks in and around Barrie. That includes areas in the 400 and pushing into where these two very robust cells still remain. Heavy rain, hail is going to continue to be a feature. However, the environment is beginning to diminish in terms of that explosive development, but the threat is still going to be there. Up through North Bay, we are starting to see images of a possible tornado that has made its way through Powassan. The rotation, it has moved out of Powassan, but continues to track over some of the little lakes there. So we're going to continue to see this tornado warning in place, and the rotation on this storm still looks robust. We have an abundance of severe thunderstorms across Highway 11, so you're going to want to make sure you're traveling extra slow. Moving over into Alberta and Saskatchewan, things are really just ramping up there. We don't have any more tornado warnings in place for the foothills, which is great news, but severe thunderstorms are still going to be impacting commutes Kim, especially along the QE2, and things will be ramping up just west and north of Edmonton. So this is just all beginning, but hopefully everybody is weather aware and has stayed up with us throughout the past 3 hours of this live stream.
Yes, you know, the storms are dying down in a few places, but not everywhere, and new ones will pop up. As you know, we will continue to be on our Weather Network channel on television covering these storms. We will obviously be giving you alerts, and you can see your watches, your warnings, your radar too on your app. So you can see it on our website, theweathernetwork.com, or your Weather Network app. All great places to get your weather, and of course the Weather Network on television. But for now, we will wrap up our 3-hour live stream. And again, please be weather aware, as you were saying, Rachel. It's been great, you know, covering these storms with you all afternoon and evening, and we hope people have a great weekend, and please be safe.
Yeah, please be safe not only today, but also into Saturday, where the threat is going to continue to push and move into Quebec. So thank you for being with us.